Progress.
Welcome to the October 9th, 2025 meeting of the Brookline School Committee. We are going to start with the consent agenda. Do I have anybody who would like to move the consent agenda?
Sure, I'll move.
Started. Yes, great. So just a couple of logistical things.
Get a second.
Oh, sorry. First, I'd like to get a second to.
I'll second and I want to make a comment.
Okay, great. Yep. I'm going to comment, then Carolyn, and then you. So just as we get started, Val Frias hopes to join us later.
I'm here.
And there we go. And Val Frias is online, and Carolyn.
I just wanted to say for the public, anyone who might be watching, probably around 8 o'clock, I have to step out for a period of time to attend to an unchangeable meeting for personal business. So apologies for that break.
And Mariah.
I just wanted to highlight for the committee that we've changed our practice a little bit around, and anyone else who's interested, the accounts payable warrant. So rather than reporting on them occasionally, I was feeling bad because we'd get to the end of the night and then I wouldn't report. And so now we have changed our process. So it's the reports are being sent to Betsy and then they will just be, as you see them sort of tonight, like since our last meeting, you've got this many and you don't see it yet because you don't have the October one, but I've started trying to put in like interesting things that I saw. So when we get to October, you'll see, I don't want to ruin the surprise of the next one you're going to see, but let's just say, rather than trying to remember stuff, now it's written down. So it's sort of like an interesting interlude.
You don't intend it to just be a list with check marks. It's going to be a little bit of commentary too.
A little bit of commentary is the idea, yes. And sometimes, like, again, I don't want to ruin it. So why don't we wait till next time and you can see how exciting it's going to get. Yes.
Right. Don't get ahead of yourself.
I know, I really hyped it up now. So.
So that brings us to discussing the consent agenda or going on to the vote. We're going to bring A through D all together. Then I guess I'm going to move on to a vote. And I will start over to my right. Bob, how do you vote on the consent agenda?
I vote yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us on to administrative business. So are we going to, Mariah or Bella, am I going to rely on you for these? Are we going to do any? Yeah, we're on, well, starting with 2A. Are we taking these separate?
I think.
We usually would like to have these as separate votes. Okay. So before we get started, would anybody like to move a vote on 2A? And then we'll have our conversation.
So moved.
Great.
Seconded.
Seconded. All right. So is there any conversation for 2A? We're discussing the high school building project as we saw in our packet.
I actually thought Susan might be online, but I'm not, I can't actually, I can't even speak to these.
I guess my,
Well, we all read about them, but yeah?
just a comment. I mean, it just seems to me, seeing that the select board has already approved it, I'm not sure that our questions this evening will circle it back to be reconsidered. It just seemed in reading it that this is money we're spending to fix a problem with a building that we just finished building, in which apparently there may have been some defects in how it either was designed or how to maintain its temperature equilibration. And so now using funds to remedy the situation.
Is Susan online? Because I have a specific question. Susan, my question is, who is, like, is this going to be added to what I understood was the legal proceedings against the contractor, or has that been settled already? I don't know if I can ask that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mariah, if it's going to be added to or not, but it's necessary in order to proceed to address the issues.
Okay. Because Jesse, I don't know if you were aware that this was like an area of contention, the between the contractor who built the building, or other people might not have been aware too, that this was an ongoing issue, and then there was an area of contention, and it was going to, as I understand it, court. So, okay, thank you, Susan.
Yep.
Carolyn?
So, yeah, it's sort of similar, not to beat this, but it would be helpful to, for those reasons, I think maybe we saw it was going to mediation? I don't even, like, I would like to know kind of where it does stand legally. Are we taking the contractor to court? Is it in mediation? And just more about what exactly these services are in that context. And who would, sorry, Jesse, you're saying this was already approved by the select board?
I believe so, yes. It's been
So
brought before
was it
the-
approved by the,
a unanimous vote of the select board on this particular item.
sorry, I don't, what do we,
Signed yet.
oh, sorry, I moved, I put it away. Who is our building commission liaison? That's you. So what do you know, Andy, about this?
Nothing. I wasn't at the most recent building commission meeting. I don't know whether it came up, so.
So there's two issues. One is related, that you're discussing is related to an ongoing dispute around, we'll say, that's tied up in a legal dispute with the contractor. So at the high school, the HVAC system isn't functioning in the way that we had anticipated. And so the temperature is not consistent throughout the building. So we need to have some money allocated in order to be able to do some re-engineering there. That's one issue. The other issue is the legal matter, which we really can't discuss in open session.
We do have a motion on the table, and I think the reason why I felt comfortable with that is because I thought that just the documentation explained it in full, and that, okay.
Just wondering if we could vote.
So we can vote. So that's where I was going to go with that. So Bob, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Abstain.
Donna?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that brings us to 2B of administrative business, and this is the roofing project at the high school. Before we see if there are any questions, would anybody like to move this item?
So moved.
Great, and seconded by Mariah. Thank you. Okay. We'll bring this to a vote. Bob, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So 2C is the approval of the grant for Brookline Education Foundation. We have an explanation here of why it's being asked of us now. And is this the one that you're going to speak to? Great.
I was just going to say that when we were at finance 2 weeks ago or so, this one was not quite ready for consideration by the committee. And so it was removed at that time, and so now it's ready. And so hopefully although typically this would go to finance, I think there's some eagerness to proceed with the work, and so we are presenting it tonight for consideration by the full committee, just due to the timeliness. So I would move approval.
I'll second.
We have a second from Suzanne. Second. I'll start in reverse order with the vote. Val,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes,
Suzanne,
Yes.
Mariah,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That brings us to public comment. And our public comment is going to start online. I don't know if we're ready with Jennifer Roberts.
Hi, sorry, a little bit fussy. So hi, thank you so much. Good evening, Brookline School Committee members, Superintendent Wong, Dr. Gibbons, and school administrators. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to just start and state at the outset that I greatly respect the work you do and appreciate that you are here because you are deeply committed to supporting our students, teachers, and staff. It is precisely because of that commitment that I bring a concern to you tonight regarding bus ridership in South Brookline, as a hopeful collaborator with you on this issue. And I want to underscore that just today, a number of us received an email from Dr. Givens offering a meeting to discuss this issue. And I plan to be a part of that. I just wanted it on everyone's radar still. At an earlier school committee meeting this year, following the issue with missing bus emails, we learned a surprising fact. A large percentage of South Brookline families who sign up for the bus service don't actually use it. I was frustrated by the conclusion offered that the service must not be needed. In my opinion, when a service is being so radically underutilized, it seems to me that the next step is to determine why it is failing the community it is intended to serve. The most logical assumption is that the current scheduling does not meet the needs of the students it is intending to serve. My experience and what I've heard directly from other parents points to a number of scheduling mismatches, and these are just a few. Morning buses are much too early. Many families cannot get their adolescents on a bus that delivers them to school 45 minutes before the day even begins. The 3 p.m. bus is, as I understand it, frequently or not infrequently overcrowded, making it unpleasant and uncomfortable for a number of students. Students' schedules and needs vary over the course of the year due to academics or extracurriculars. They may be signed up for regular arrival but need extra help and need to go in early. They participate in sports too, but not 3 seasons. The need for a 5:30 late bus coinciding with the end of sports practices seems like an absolutely large need, whereas the 4 o'clock bus seems to be at a time that very few are using and seems inconvenient and maybe unnecessary. So I want to just really make sure to state that I don't think that there's any parent who wants to drive their children to school, but we're forced to do that because we don't have a feasible or reasonable bus option. I believe that it's important that we address this failure to utilize the school bus. This is not just about convenience, it's about increased traffic around the high school, environmental impacts of what should be unnecessary rides. But most importantly, it is directly related to student wellness, in my opinion. We are currently, and this is not my opinion, facing a mental health and sleep crisis among adolescents in this country. Districts like Newton Public Schools have shifted their high school start time to 9 a.m. in recognition of this very real struggle. For 25 years, I've been a high school social worker in a neighboring community, and I have seen the real impacts of sleep and the mental health crisis. I don't think it's reasonable then to expect high school students to sacrifice sleep to catch a bus that arrives significantly before the start of the school day. And when families can accommodate their students' needs for additional sleep, of course they will. So I believe our South Brookline students and families deserve a bus service that works for us. Therefore, I respectfully request that the school committee and administrators consider, firstly, shifting the morning bus time, minimally adjusting the school bus schedule to a time that is reasonably close to the official start of the school day, and to conduct a meaningful assessment to formally assess why ridership is so low and what schedules would make the bus a viable and necessary option for South Brookline families. That's all I have. Thank you so much for your attention to this issue of equity and student well-being.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With public comment, we don't respond in real time, as unsatisfying as that feels. So just to remind everybody. We're moving on to presentations and discussions of current issues. And tonight we have Matt Dubois presenting the Youth Risk Behavior Survey results and leading us in a discussion as well. We're happy to see you tonight, Matt. Thank you.
Sarah, just one comment. Before Matt starts, I just wanted to publicly commend him and his team for providing these slides in advance. We appreciated getting them and appreciated being able to peruse them and start circling things and things in advance, and it's not always done, and we just want to say thank you.
And we think that our discussions are better when we're prepared like that. We're just more ready for it. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah, and I just want to, and if you have a hard time hearing me, let me know. I just want to start with expressing my deep appreciation for this group. Having time and space this evening to be able to talk about this survey is really, really important. I'm biased, but this is really important information. And I think for me, when I think about this survey at a high level, I think it answers this question that we worry about a lot, that we sort of grapple with a lot as adults, and that is, how are our kids doing? When I presented on the survey 2 years ago, I offered a pretty hopeful theme that we were starting to see improvements in our mental health outcomes, and we had a lot of work left to do. As I present this evening, I want to offer that there's going to be a lot of information, and a lot of it's going to be really promising. We've made some really, really meaningful improvements in our kids' mental health. And I want to make sure I take time to demonstrate how it is that we've gotten here, not just in work that we've done over the past 2 years, but really over the last 4 years, and the amount of resources and time and just overall investment that we've had, because I think it's important just to name how it is that we've gotten to this place. And despite this, what we're going to see in the data is that we continue to see discrepancies. And these are discrepancies that mirror much of what we see throughout the country. So we're going to see discrepancies based on LGBTQ status. We're going to see discrepancies based on race, based on disability status. And so when we talk about there's more work to be done, those are particularly the spaces where there's more work to be done. As I just offered, there's a lot of information in these slides. And a lot of this information is going to feel really intense. Anytime we're talking about adolescent mental health and we're talking about substance use and suicidality, it's a lot. It's really important. We have to talk about it, but I just want to name up front that it's likely to evoke some pretty intense reactions. And so to start with, I think for us to really appreciate this moment where we are, I wanted to start by sort of taking a couple steps back and sort of understand this broader context. As we just offered in public comment, when we talk about child and adolescent mental health, we frame that within a context of a crisis. And we do that because of data like I'm showing here in this slide. So this is survey data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And so as folks are probably familiar with, this is one of the primary mechanisms that the CDC uses to monitor child and adolescent mental health. And so as you can see there, beginning in the early 90s through about 2009, it wasn't the growth that we wanted to see or the improvements that we wanted to see, but there was some improvements there. And I added that line. In 2011 is where we saw something change in a really significant way for our kids. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that might be, but if you sort of fast forward to 2021, that's where 42% of high school students were reporting the last year they felt so sad or so hopeless they stopped doing typical activities. That alone is not diagnostic of depression, but it is a core symptom. And so you can look at those other stats. So leading into the pandemic, at least 1 in 5 children were meeting criteria for a mental health diagnosis. We saw really meaningful increases in kids presenting to the emergency department because of mental health and safety concerns, right? So these are the data that frame what it is what we're describing with youth mental health. And in Brookline, we were not immune to that. And so those bottom graphs are sort of challenging to read, but those are internal surveys that we did with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data. And so you see in 2021, a third of our high schoolers were saying that they felt so sad or hopeless they stopped doing activities over a period of time. This is really scary, and it's heartbreaking, and it's terrifying that 1 in 5 high schoolers were saying in the past year they seriously considered suicide. We started our universal screening in the fall of 2020. And at that time, we saw
We have to be sensitive to whether those at home can hear you well. Is that, Betsy, while we're evaluating it?
And obviously coming out of. Hello? Oh, okay, that works. There you go. We're good. Bob, you keep your mic. So we ask ourselves this really important question: why? Why in 2011 did we see this marked decline in our kids' mental health? And it is complex. There's multiple reasons for that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about social media in slides that we have sort of towards the end. Certainly, COVID exacerbated and worsened many of what we saw. But one thing I want to focus here is that what we've known for a very long time is that there's very real barriers to adults, to kids, to people accessing mental health care. What I think is a pretty powerful finding is that the average latency, the average amount of time between a person accesses care and when they first presented with symptoms is a decade. So you have a bunch of young people who were presenting with symptoms as children, as teenagers, and never got treatment. What's also one of the leading causes of that as well is that there simply aren't enough mental health providers in our country. Even in Massachusetts, even in Brookline, that's oftentimes the case. And that's particularly true for children, where the vast majority of people who are trained as mental health professionals are trained to work with adults. And so a functional consequence of that is that the vast majority of children who access mental health services in our country primarily do so at school. So there's no version of addressing this where schools aren't a major player, where schools aren't central to doing it. There just isn't a version of doing it. And so what I want to talk about in a second when we think about our programming is how do we make sure that we're meeting that need, both at school and within the community. And so, what I think that I am very, very proud of is we've always been interested in our kids' mental health. That's the thing that we've always prioritized. But I do want to name in 2021, we did a lot more in this space. What is particularly important to draw out is in 2021, we hired 9 additional school social workers and adjustment counselors. We did lose one of those last year through the budget cycle, but that was really powerful. What I do want to name is that if we had just hired 9 additional clinicians and said they'll take care of it, they're going to work with the kids who are really struggling, we're okay, that would not have worked. What's really important as we think about, this comes up in medicine a lot, is that we have to be just as interested in promotion and prevention. We can't first become interested in a child's mental health once they're presenting with anxiety and depression. And so what we've really been thoughtful about is making sure that kids have access to really powerful protective factors. I know you've heard me a lot talk about belonging. In so many ways, it's our North Star. And I want to show some data about what that has offered our children. It has literally been life-saving work that we've engaged in. What's also important is that we are actively teaching kids to have really, really strong emotional lives. We're helping teach kids how to identify what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and perhaps most importantly, when you're feeling a big thing, how do you keep on working? How do you keep on pursuing your goals? That's a massive, massive life skill, and I'll talk in a little bit, but that's always going to be in support of academic rigor. That's always going to be in support of every single academic goal that we have for children. Within a more concerning spaces, we do some really focused prevention work on suicidality, and that starts in middle school and the high school. And a big part of that work is making sure kids know that mental health symptoms, including thinking about suicide, is very treatable, and that there are pathways to get treatment, and when you do, things do get better. What has obviously been powerful in addition to those prevention efforts is that we do have incredibly skilled clinicians in our buildings. What I do want to offer here is that many of our clinicians do hold licenses that would allow them to work outside of schools. They just happen to love working in the place where kids show up every single day. The consequence of that is that the quality of care that kids get at school is very comparable to what they would get in the community. That said, there are things that kids are working through. We're working on that in school is going to be hard. So for example, trauma. doing really intensive trauma work at school isn't really fair to kids. So we want to make sure that we have really strong community-based partnerships, and we've invested heavily in this area so that when children both need school-based care and community-based care, that amount of time that they're waiting is pretty shortened. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're taking care of kids, adults as well. We want to make sure their teachers are really well supported, that their clinicians are well supported, and their parents and caretakers as well. It's almost impossible to take care of somebody else if you're not feeling well. And so we've invested a lot in this space as well. So as you can see, there's a lot that goes into this. And we've tried to be really thoughtful, we've tried to be really cohesive and sort of hit all of these angles. What I have certainly offered in the last 4 years is that as we engage in this work, we have a deep responsibility to certainly to kids, but also to the community, also to all of you, is to be able to offer what is this offering our children? What is the impact of this work? And so we've embedded a lot of ways to, in an ongoing way, evaluate our programming. What is crucial is particularly when we're talking about kids' mental health, we have to do way more of what works and none of what doesn't. And so as we go through the slides today, I do want to have that lens of us continuing to lean into the things that are working, and then where we continue to have gaps or we continue to have needs, making sure we're being nimble with our programming. And so these are just some of the ways that we go about evaluating it. I know you've heard me present on our universal screening. This evening, I'm going to talk about our Brookline Youth Health Survey. We also come at it in other angles. So we look at our attendance data. We look at referrals for special education. I look at caseloads all the time for both individual and group work. And in every single part of that, we're continuously evaluating, is what we're offering for kids meeting their needs. So as you see, I'll just sort of start here. So I'm going to try to use this new way we're describing the survey as the Brookline Youth Health Survey. Oftentimes we'll use the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. The reason why we're differentiating it is that we actually don't do the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We do use some of the questions from the survey, and that's helpful just to compare national and state level data to ours. But we partner with the Department of Public Health to create a tool that's much more responsive to our needs as a community. And so I just want to sort of, and I might accidentally say Youth Risk Behavior Survey, but we're trying to brand it the Brookline Youth Health Survey. And in terms of what this looked like, so in April of last year, we sent out an email to families, and we gave them an opportunity to review the survey and an opportunity to opt out. The survey is intense, and we want to make sure that parents have all the information that they need to be able to make the decision that's best for their family. A relatively small number of children were opted out through there. Kids are also told at the point of administration they can also opt out. And what I want to name here is that we never want to coerce a child to offer information. We never want to make them offer. We want to highlight the benefits, for example, of us being able to understand what kids are going through to build out programming. But sometimes people will sort of ask me, well, can we just make them do the survey? No, we never want kids to feel coerced to do it. And so then last April and May is when students in middle school and high school completed the survey. And so you see here, we had a relatively strong response rate. We had slightly over 2,400 kids take this survey. I want to name here is that 6th graders at Lincoln and Pierce were actually selected by the state to complete the state level youth risk behavior survey data. It would have been unfair to them to both complete that very long survey and our very long survey, and so they were not included in the survey. Whenever, as folks are probably appreciate, whenever you engage in survey work, you're anticipating not everybody's going to complete the survey, and that's okay. But one of the first steps you take a look at is, of the kids who took the survey, how similar are they to the full group of kids that we want to generalize to? And so you can see in this table data from DESE in terms of our student demographics, and then the demographics of the students who took the survey. Not perfect, not identical. You would never expect it to be identical. But we're confident that there's enough similarity where we can generalize to the full population of students, where there's enough similarity there that sort of gives us a really good understanding about what kids are experiencing. and perhaps most importantly, being able to use this to drive what future work is going to look like. When I presented 2 years ago, folks were just interested. This is all self-reported data from students, but sort of these are some of the identity sort of markers that kids self-described. Again, we're not pulling any information. This is an completely anonymous survey, but this is what kids are offering. We are almost done with our summary and trends report. We're partnering with the Department of Public Health. We made some pretty good progress in that area, but there's a couple of sections, particularly related to substance use, that are not complete yet. And so we're hopeful that's going to be by this fall. By the end of the fall, we'll have it complete. When it is done, it will be on the website. It's likely to be a very long report. I think our last one was about 150 pages. I think this one might be a little bit shorter. But I hope the committee and the community is able to take a look, because I think this tells a story about why it is that we're doing what we're doing. As I sit down to analyze the survey, I wanted to sort of be transparent on some of the questions that I'm looking at. There's way more than this, but these are some of the foundational questions, and these are the questions that I really hope to answer this evening, that I want you to come away with answers to each of these questions. The top one I bolded there because I think this is particularly important in my thinking, is that what we're of course interested in is what percentage of our kids are needing mental health intervention. And Jesse, I know you asked us during the budget cycle, do we have enough staffing to meet the needs of our students, right? And so as I go through this, I really want to be able to comment on this, right? Do we have the capacity to support the mental health needs of all of our kids? And then also, what's really important is that we can't stay at 10,000 feet, right? We have to disaggregate the data to understand groups of kids, and are we meeting every student's needs? And so as you'll see in just about every graph, that we're disaggregating the data, right? And so we'll have trend level data that might look really positive, and then there's a lot more work still to do in those spaces. All right, and so in answering that first question, this one is pretty important to me. And so kids are asked in the past year, have you had, due to mental health symptoms, have you had difficulty concentrating, focusing, or remembering? Again, what we need to appreciate is that our mental health impacts every single aspect of our life. And so we know that experiencing mental health challenges as a teenager is going to impact your ability to do well in school. And this is the first area where we're seeing a ton of progress, and there's more work, right? So in 2023, 37% of our high schoolers said, yeah, my mental health is making it hard for me to do school. And that number is down to 21% now. 1 in 5 is still too big of a number, but that's moving in an incredibly, incredibly positive way. Well, we added to, and this is, we didn't have 2023 data here for middle school students, so we'll replicate this again over time, but their number's at 16%. So 21% of high schoolers, 16% for middle school. We also administer on the survey a tool called the PHQ-4. If you've had a wellness visit recently, you've probably taken the PHQ-9 and the GAD-7. Those are really common screening tools for anxiety and depression. The PHQ-4 takes 2 items from each of those tools and sort of gives you a good understanding of somebody's overall mental health. In interpreting this, what we generally think about is that kids who are falling in the moderate concern or significant concern area are likely kids that are going to benefit from mental health support. If you're in that potential concern, you're probably more in that monitoring and sort of paying attention, but certainly if you're in that moderate concern or significant concern bucket, right? And so just using these data points, where my thinking sort of goes to is, okay, so here at the high school, you know, it's at least 14% here. At the middle school, it's at least 10%. And so here, it's somewhere in the range at middle school that we want to make sure we have capacity for somewhere between 10 to 16% of students, and at the high school, up to 21%, maybe a floor of around 15%. Another, and this is, I think we ask a lot of important questions on the survey, but this is what I think is one of the most important questions we ask. That says, again, in the past year, have you had a period of 2 weeks or more where you stop doing typical activities because of feeling so sad or so hopeless. And hope is a main character in just about every single mental health intervention that we're going to provide children. One of the first goals that we have with mental health treatment is to engender hope. And the reason for that is going through a hard thing with hope is infinitely better than going through that hard thing without it. And so as you see here, when we asked that question in 2023, that number was at 28%. And we saw this really meaningful decline now, that number is 15%. Again, I think we still have room to grow there, but that's a really significant decline. Because we would always rather a kiddo going through a hard thing in the presence of hope, right? So that those pairings are really, really powerful. And so this is trend data over time. That red line, which also happens to be the top line, is national level data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And then below that is our Brookline High School data. And so you can see in 2021, whereas 1 in 3, we're now down to 15%. And so that's 2 consecutive measurement cycles where we've seen this pretty meaningful decrease for kids. So we are always a year ahead. So they won't produce their report until next year. Yeah. We're a little quicker than they are. And that number of kids had less in middle school, less area to grow there, but still some decline. When we compare our 2023 number of 15% at the state level is at 27%. So we had probably already made some pretty meaningful gains there for our middle school students. And the number's at 13% now. This is a very intense side. And so here the question is, in the past year, have you seriously considered suicide? In 2023, the number was at 12% for the high school. That number has now dipped down to 8%. The middle school, it's remained lower and relatively flat at 7% in 2023, remained at 8% now. And so again, I think what's really powerful here is this longitudinal data, where when we compare our rates to national data for a very long time, it was very similar, if not sort of more concerns than we saw nationally. And now over the past 2 times, as we've seen this really marked decline in this area. And what I think this helps frame is I have opportunities to speak with folks who are doing this work throughout the country. And what I'm really proud of is that our investment is robust. And I think what we see at the national level is that's sort of what it looks like when we're not investing. When we invest, this is what it looks like. And so this is, I think, just a really, really powerful demonstration of what it looks like over time for kids. Yeah, Jesse.
In the, well, there are no page numbers. The one that said maybe right before this, seriously considering suicide. Yeah. So this is the first time that the slide shows actually a higher number in 2025 than 2023 on the right for middle school.
Yep.
So that's a little significant. It certainly hasn't gone down.
Yep.
My question, though, what that led me in reviewing it earlier was, what do 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders know about suicide as compared to, they're just pre-adolescent? Is their conception of what suicide is significantly or cognitively different for them than 9th, 12th graders?
That's a really important question. And what I think is important to name is that sometimes people are afraid that, for example, in middle school, if we start talking about suicide, is that going to make kids suddenly think about a thing that they never thought about before, right? And what we know is that this isn't the case. Unfortunately, there are kids who are in middle school who are seriously considering suicide. And there are devastating examples, unfortunately, where plans are made and where kids do die by suicide. And so we start measuring this, we start asking questions in middle school, because this is when kids are starting to present with this symptom. And again, as we talk about this for kids, it's really scary, but anything that you talk about is treatable, particularly within the mental health space. And so in 7th grade is when, from a programming perspective, where we start teaching about it. But we know, we're working with kids who are much younger than that, who are starting to talk about it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Another intense slide. And so here we're asking students in the past year, have you made a plan? The number was at 7% in 2023, 4% in 2025. And so here are our time series data. Certainly 2021 is probably standing out too. What I do want to offer is that we changed the way that we asked the question in 2021. The way we were asking the question before that, it was probably a better measurement of having made an attempt. We've asked the question the same way now since 2021, so that decline is more representative in that area, but I just want to call that out. That part of the increase could have been the way that we were wording the question, but I think it also reflected increased concern. Yeah.
Over several of the past slides, there are, and maybe you're going to talk about this later, in which case, and I didn't get the chance to review the slides in advance like others might have. There are some groups that are so disparate, and I guess are you going to talk about that later?
No, we can, yeah, and that's real. So part of it, for example, here's an example. In the report, we're going to spell this out a little bit. So obviously, the N matters, right? And so in some of these categories, we might be looking at 6 students. Their experiences still matter, right? And so we want to capture that. But part of what you're probably observing is where Ns are pretty small, right? And so most categories where you might see like 50%, 75%, it's usually the experience of a couple of students.
Sure, but as you say, their experiences still matter. And I guess my related question is, I can't remember, I think you told us last time, you're able to use the data to follow up with specific students? Oh, you can't, it's anonymous?
It's anonymous,
Okay.
yep. But that's why our universal screening is so important. That is an anonymous, yep. And so here, obviously, yeah, we're concerned, right? So that question that you have of if kids are giving us really concerning information, are we going to be able to identify who these kids are, right? And so through this survey, no, but we have other mechanisms. So for example, in the Signs of Suicide curriculum, we do depression and suicide screening in that as well. And then the universal screening is another way to pick that up. And what I would say, what's really important too is that there have been many examples this year, and this is something I'm really proud of, where kids are being really good friends and telling adults when their friends are saying things that are concerning. And so there's more formalized ways that we'll pick up concerning issues, and then sort of those less formal but just as powerful ways that we can pick that up. And so we're seeing a lot of improvements here, right, and work to do. So I think what's really important is for names. So how is it? Right, what are those primary active ingredients that are resulting in us having these improved outcomes, right? And what I want to stress here is that when we talk about things like belonging, when we talk about things like safe adult, we describe those as protective factors. When we say that, we mean we're trying to protect kids against the very worst outcomes. And so when we think about something, for example, like suicidality, right, there are some things that we know are a part of that. We know feeling hopeless, feeling like you have thwarted belongingness, so feeling like you don't have a group, feeling like you're a burden on other people. Those are things that we have actively targeted in our work where we're helping kids understand asking for help is not a burden. It's a really, really important thing. Our work on belonging, again, we have data here that has literally saved kids' lives. We have more work to do, but that's the power of this work. And so it's not surprising to me, right, when we saw a peak in mental health symptoms in 2021 that was held against our lowest number of safe adults. And then here, where it's the highest number that we've observed, we're seeing improvements in mental health outcomes. This doesn't come from the youth risk, from the Brookline Youth Health Survey, but this is from our universal screening data. Same pattern here, right? As we've seen increases in belonging, we can hold that up against the improvements that we've seen in kids' mental health. And so again, it doesn't surprise me. I'm proud of it, right? But it doesn't surprise me that when our mental health data are outpacing what we might see at the state or district, state or national level, that our belonging data also is typically outpacing what we see at the state and national level. And then again, one last thing here is as we teach kids about their emotional lives, right? It's really important for us to stress that sometimes you're not going to feel great. And that's okay. And we want kids to have the skills necessary to navigate those skillfully. Beginning in the fall of 22 is when we have increased the amount of explicit instruction that kids get in this space. And what I want to be clear about is that when I talk about this, I talk about us investing time. And I use that term very, very intentionally. Is when we invest time in this space, it is never at the sacrifice of academic rigor. It's never at the sacrifice of high expectations for kids. It is necessary and important to have high expectations for kids. The nature of high expectations is they can be stressful. So we want kids to have the skills to navigate that skill successfully. And what we know is a big part of kids building out their educational program in a way that they want to is their capacity to manage stress, right? So as a life skill, we want kids to have this, so every goal that they want, they're going to be able to meaningfully pursue. So this is another really important data point for me. So we asked kids in the past year, have you accessed mental health care? At the high school, that number was at 23%. At the middle school, the number was at 21%. I'm pretty confident that kids are probably underreporting the clinical services that they get at school. Sometimes even if they're meeting with a psychologist or a social worker at that school, they just don't count it counseling because it happens at school, but it's functionally the same. And so when I look at this number, right, about 22%, also sort of with those numbers that I started out with, and then I look at our caseloads where we've been able to serve kids either in individual or group level work, about 15% of our kids, which I want to name, that's up to 1,000 kids in our district, right? That's sort of the capacity that we're working with, right? And so, Jesse, when you ask me, like, do we have the staffing to meet the needs of our kids, where I say right now I'm fairly comfortable with that, that's sort of where that comes from, right? If we were to shift that, if we were to divest, I'd feel deeply uncomfortable, right? Because that would have an impact, right? But right now, when I say things like, I think we have our arms around it, it doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that there aren't very real needs there, right? But in terms of our current, our staffing, I think it's generally meeting our kids' needs. And then, yeah, just
Yeah, can I ask a question? I mean,
yeah.
in going through the slides up to this point, I had some questions developed in my mind. And then when it switched to attendance, then the rest of the slides are talking about sort of different things. My question had to do with the segment in every slide that had to do with how kids identify in gender seemed to have, I'm sure in your mind as well, some question points about the types of identifications kids have that generate more anxiety and more stress. And I guess the question is, both in middle school and I know in high school we have groupings that allow for students to come together and get support, and maybe over time we'll see improvements in that, or maybe that's a safety area, and yet when they fill out the survey, they're still feeling a lot of stress, right? And how does that then work for these same kind of students who are still in the questioning mode, let's say, in middle school? Because that seems to be the area that has the highest percentages.
And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I think this is a good opportunity as well. Yeah, so one of the, what we know about the experience of kids who are LGBTQ plus is a deep lack of belonging, that so many of our kids are feeling alone within that, right? And so when you think about how do we address that, and I'll talk a little bit. So things like the Queer Student Union, for example, at the high school is a powerful part of that. We need to be doing more than just that, right? But that's a really good example of the type of supports that we need to be thinking about to address that. Yeah. And so again, what I want us to always connect is that, again, there's no version of a child's mental health that's not going to either advance their academic and functioning or impact it, right? And so again, I'm not surprised, right, that as our mental health symptoms were increasing, our attendance was worse. And as we've seen improvements in our mental health, our attendance has improved. And so our chronic absenteeism number for last school year was 10.8%. What I also just want to draw attention to is that 20% number. So DESE, because of how rough attendance has been over the past 4 years, actually created a new chronic absenteeism number or statistic where it's 20% or more of school days, right? And so we had a really meaningful decline in that bucket of absenteeism as well as with that 10% threshold. All right, this is sort of a hard pivot here, but I want to have a couple slides here on social media use. And I know this is something that we also think about and worry a lot, and it certainly is something that we think has contributed to kids' mental health. And so we ask students, how often are you using social media? This is probably an underreport. What I would say as adults, we actually underreport our use as well. But we see a really meaningful number of kids saying at least several times a day. And so when we look at kids who endorsed depression symptoms on the PHQ-9, we saw about half of those kids say that they're using it at least once an hour. And so we see a relationship there. And then we take the students who are saying that they're using it at least once a day, and we say, how many hours are you using a day? And there's a really meaningful number of kids who are saying at least 4 hours, 6 hours or more. And again, if we cut those data and look at the kids who are endorsing depression-based symptoms, over a quarter of those kids are saying 6 or more hours a day.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. The top of the slide says technology and social media use, and then the question on the side is social media. And I
Yeah.
guess my question is, are we
Bad
really
heading.
talking about social media?
Social media bad.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. There are some other questions we have about technology, but this is specifically about social media use. Yep. And so we ask ourselves, so what is that relation? So why would there be a relationship between social media use and mental health? And we sort of have two primary hypotheses. When humans, when adults, when kids use social media, it's very common to engage in what's called upward social comparison. So you look at somebody's curated life and you can come away with the feeling, is my life as good as this other person's? And so when you're a teenager and you're kind of thinking about that all the time, it's very easy to come away from that feeling like your life is worse than your peers. What we also know is that there is an immense opportunity cost to using social media for 4 hours or 6 hours a day. And there's no version of that where it's not going to impact other health promoting behaviors. And so, and kids are, at least some kids are being honest with their use, right? Where kids are saying, yeah, it's impacting how much sleep I get. I don't have a slide here, but I think the number was only 8% of high school students were reporting to getting 9 or more hours of sleep a night. Sometimes we'll talk about the 8 hours of sleep. That's not enough for most teenagers. So the vast majority of our high school students are chronically sleep deprived. Kids are describing it's impacting family time. That it's again about over a quarter of kids are saying their life is feeling worse and worse. One of the best ways to make your life stressful as a teenager is not to do your homework, because every adult is going to be on top of you because of that. Now, what is interesting is that kids will acknowledge this, but then the vast majority of kids will also say, but it helps me with my social connections. And so there likely is a both and to this, right? We know that social media can be a really helpful facilitator. I think our concern comes when it's totally replacing and or when it's impeding on these other health promoting behaviors. And so we clearly have some more work to do there. But I think this helps draw some of the impact. Yeah, Jesse.
So with the personal electronic device policy that we approved last year, the amount of time students can be spending on their devices during the day is very small.
Yes.
Even if you add up all the passing minutes.
Yeah.
So how much of this is the district pushing back to parents and caregivers in terms of helping adults monitor, manage, and care for the kids that are living in their homes?
Yeah, at the end of a couple of slides. So that's one of our buckets of work. Yeah, and what's interesting is, some of this technology, right, is newer in the last 10 years, right? So if you're an adult and you didn't grow up with your phone, if you didn't grow up with social media, it's really hard to even understand what kids are doing on the phone. So we do have some work, and we started some of this work last year to really give parents the information that they need to both understand what are they actually doing when they're on their phones, and then understanding some of the impacts of it. And I would say from an intervention standpoint, when we notice that it is interfering with sleep, when it's interfering with homework time, when it's interfering with getting to school, that's almost always something that we're talking about with families as an intervention point. Yeah. Yeah.
And the personal electronic policy, like the timeline of this versus when we implemented the policy?
So it officially kicked in this year, although last year some middle schools were playing around with it. So this could have been at a time where kids were maybe still using it during the school day. So yeah, I mean, from a program evaluation standpoint, it'd be really interesting to, next spring when we do this, does that number come down a little bit? Yeah, Carolyn.
And this is not at all to downplay the facts that you're talking about and the fact that that being on electronics can be depressing and stressful. But I'll just kind of make a plug for of course, if our kids, if we as a district provide sufficient opportunities for our middle schoolers and high schoolers to play sports, be in clubs, be in community, they have less time to be on that phone.
100%.
Yeah.
That's incredibly well, and that's something Kyle Williams, who's athletic director at the high school, he's been a really strong partner in this work and just really describing for kids doing things after school in a community is so powerful. We actually have some pretty powerful data you're not going to see here about the relationship for kids who are playing sports and on their attendance, on their grades, on their belonging. Huge protective factor for kids. All right, so this is kind of, again, another sort of hard turn here, but we're doing more data work here, but I did want to present on some substance use data. And so here, I'll offer some data on alcohol use, on marijuana use, and on students using vaping products. Here's trend data over the past 12 years, where we're continuing to see sort of the steady decline in alcohol use. Not a super meaningful difference from 2023, but we still have about 1 in 5 students at the high school saying in the past month have used alcohol. Looking at lifetime marijuana use, that number was sitting just below 12%. We find this, and this is true not just in Brookline, this is true throughout the country. Every grade level in high school that a student moves through, the likelihood of them having used a substance in a lifetime increases. So in 9th grade, that number is under 5%, so a relatively small number of students, and then by the time you're an upperclassman, that number climbs to about 1 in 4. This is a question that I'm very interested in. So a bucket of questions that we asked that the Youth Risk Behavior Survey doesn't ask centers around perception of peer use and perception of risk. Well, we know from an intervention standpoint that if you are a student and you're not using, and you believe that you're in the majority, the vast majority of your peers are not using, you're likely to keep on not using. If you believe that everybody around me is using, that actually increases your likelihood, right? So 86% of students were sort of describing, yeah, relatively rare, like it's not a majority of students who are using. And so here, and I'll talk about this a little bit in some of our more responsive work, one of the intervention points that we have is to sort of right size that perception of having kids really understand not just sort of overall level of use, but then sort of related here, the amount of risks associated with using substances. I know students engaging in vaping is something that I think about. I know a lot of community members are thinking about. One thing here I want to offer, and folks might be thinking this, is it's not uncommon that people ask me, well, how do we know kids are telling the truth? We super don't. But what I do know is that whatever variance or whatever number or percentage of kids who may not be telling the truth now, that was probably the same back in 2023, probably the same before that, right? So we're sort of holding that variable constant. And so when we ask this question now, 13% of students reported having used a vape product in the past 30 days. That is up from 9% in 2023. When we ask students what the active ingredient is, over half of those students reported caffeine. And then there was a mix of nicotine, essential oils, nicotine, marijuana, essential oils were the 3 other ones. There was a concerning number of kids who said they weren't sure. And that's really concerning as we think about risk for kids. And then what is important, and I really want to this is a thing I'm going to be looking for and sort of tracking how effective our education is that 3/4 of our kids are saying, yeah, vaping does pose moderate to great risk. We still have 25% of kids who are maybe doubting the risk, and so that's another important intervention in place. All right, that was a lot of information. But what I do want to draw attention to is what is it that we do with this information. And so based on progress, we want to continue to do a lot of the work that we're doing. Again, in that spirit, we want to continue to do more of what is working. And so we're going to continue to do a lot of prevention work that's helping kids develop the social emotional skills they need to really flourish in their lives. Jesse, we just talked about this earlier, but when we look at those gaps, right, we have a lot of work that we're thinking about within affinity groups. And what I want to say is that work is always both and, is we want kids to be connected to their building at a whole. We want kids to be connected to their classes, right? Also having spaces like the Queer Student Union are so incredibly powerful, right? So it's sort of a both and for kids. Carlin, who's the coordinator of wellness for the district, every summer we take a look at all of our health programming. And we had some early analysis, and we used that to sort of think through and review our health programming that we're offering students this year. And so we're continuing to do the Signs of Suicide work. The NAN Project is a group that comes into our 9th grade classes, and it's really focused on helping kids connect to care if they require it. Then we're also introducing some new lessons from the Stanford Reach Lab. Those are really focused on marijuana use and vaping use. And so those will be new lessons that kids will get this year. One change this year is our mental health screening. Over the past 5 years, we've done 3 times a year. Kids have gotten some survey fatigue, and so we are moving to October and March. We're going to be just as nimble, just as responsive to kids' needs. We're still going to be able to evaluate all of our programming, but it'll happen twice this year instead of 3 times. And then also in this space, so we know that we need to help parents navigate this world that their teens are in. It is a very, very different world. And so we partner, here you're seeing some workshops that are sponsored by the Massachusetts Partnership for Youth. We also work really closely with BPEN. And so we actually, with BPEN, we create a master calendar of events that families have available to them throughout the entirety of the school year. But those are some things that families will have. And then we work really closely with the Department of Public Health. I sit on the steering committee of the Brookline Wellness and Prevention Coalition. One of the goals that we have this year is a town-wide anti-vaping campaign. The peer leaders at the high school are going to carry some of that work, particularly the work that touches our buildings. And so they're going to do some really nice work around education at the high school. We're also going to try to leverage them to do some co-teaching with adults in middle schools. We know that kids tend to listen to each other way more than us. So we want to leverage that reality. And so we're still planning in that space, but we're hopeful to use them there. And then finally, in thinking about when kids need more support, what does that look like? I highlighted this before, but one new thing we want to make available to students is something called the I Decide curriculum. This was developed by MGH, and it's a curriculum that's meant for kids who are presenting with substance use challenges, for kids who are caught using at school, for kids who are caught with substances at school. And so instead of a place where you just get a consequence, it might be a thing where you get consequence and additional support to sort of address what your needs are. And so this is something we want to make available in middle school. This is pretty similar to some of the diversionary work that's already happening at the high school. They're likely to use some of this as well within that work, but in some ways it's sort of bringing down the high school model into the middle school if that's a need. We're going to continue to do really good, really robust work in our school when kids need it. We've had some really good community partnerships where the amount of time that kids are on wait lists is really shrinking, so kids can get the care that they need. And then the last thing I'll just sort of offer is, and I know we talked about it earlier, but we do have really good crisis response protocols. Whenever a kid is in need, whenever we're concerned about safety, we have our entire clinical team is really well trained to respond to that. And so when we're aware of a need, we're swooping in, and kids are absolutely getting the care that they need. All right, so I know that's a lot, and I know it sounds like folks had some questions, and so yeah. Or maybe I would answer them all.
Okay, let's start with Mariah, then we'll go on to Bob and Suzanne. So Mariah?
Thanks. Matt, some of the data points you had, like attendance, were you had goals in the my brain has also stopped working at this point in the presentation. And I'm just sort of curious, like if you were to go back to some of your earlier things, I don't think you had goals specifically. Like if I recall in the strategic plan, there was like administer the survey, like, or start administering the survey. But like, at what point do you say like this, like at what point do you say 10% of students experiencing X is probably as low as we're going to get? And like, what is the threshold for which you say like, now we need to maintain as opposed to improve?
Yeah.
That kind of across the board, all of them.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Some of it is a little theoretical, and part of that is because our mental health outcomes in the country have been so poor. We don't have a really good model of what the floor could look like. If we layer on an MTSS lens to that, right, in a lot of these more concerning areas, we would hope that we would dip below 10%. I think chronic absenteeism actually is a really good area where I think our floor, if we were doing everything, we could get that somewhere around 5% of students, right? Again, we would be ambitious and say 0, right? That'd be great, right? But we know that things are coming up for kids. And so this is where we should be proud of this, and I think there's more work that can be done.
Bob?
Thank you, Matt. That was an extraordinarily professional presentation. I deeply appreciate how well it was done and the information that you gathered and the responses that you've documented. I remember when I was the head of the high school many, many years ago, I was always afraid of the day that the youth risk survey was presented because I wanted the high school to be, I want us to demonstrate that the high school was perfect. And this survey obviously was a time when I would look at the data and say, oh, we're not perfect. That was a joke. But I do have a question, which, maybe not that relevant to what you've gathered, but so over the last 2 years, we've had the Middle East war, for example. Does that, the war in the Middle East, the Gaza, and October 7th plus. You all know about that? Yeah. During all these surveys or the gathering of data, did you notice any anxiety or depression having to do with the last 2 years of that?
No, what is sort of interesting, for example, I'll pull this one. So when we look, we have a fall measurement period that's done in late fall, done in late October, right? And so if we look at October 7th in 2023, right, we can sort of we can sort of almost hold that up against it. We didn't see anything as significant now at an individual student level for sure. But when you look at that 10,000-foot view, we didn't necessarily see a challenge of it. But what I would say is that is also a really important thing that we think about is in those moments, do we have the things that kids need to navigate their school experience, right? And so going back in that time is that there were a lot of kids who accessed additional care during that time to be able to continue to do school, right? And so that's sort of another consideration is, day to day ongoing, but in those moments in particular, do we have the staffing that we need?
Yeah, I have one more question, if that's possible. I'm pretty familiar with the mental health care that's offered at the high school, the variety of interventions. I'm not that familiar with the middle school, elementary school.
Yeah.
What does it look like when, sort of in an ongoing way, teachers, parents report the kids are struggling?
Yeah.
What does it look like in the K-8 schools?
Oh, yeah, that's great. And so, sometimes we say, right, big kids, big problems, right? But our youngest learners oftentimes will still also have intensive needs. And so, as an effectiveness, counseling therapy is effective for our youngest learners all the way through our oldest learners. It looks a little bit different, right? So if you're supporting a kindergartner who's having big feelings and struggle to manage that, you're probably having a lot of floor time. You're probably doing a lot of playtime. You're trying to find ways for kids to identify what they're feeling and to practice those coping skills, right? And oftentimes when you think about counseling, we think about talk therapy. And as kids get older, as kids develop, sort of more of it is moving into that talk therapy space, whereas younger kids, it's a lot of more sort of play-based techniques, a lot of sort of skill development. In all aspects of work, this is particularly true in the elementary school, is that a thing that we talk about a lot is that most kids are with a social worker, with a counselor about 30 minutes a week. They're with all other adults way more than that. And so that educator training, that parent training is so important, so that whatever skill you're learning in the therapy session is being transferred outside of that. And so almost every student who has counseling also has consultation. That's a part of that. And that's a huge, huge lever because, of course, we're working with the kid, but we're also working with their whole ecosystem. Yeah.
Suzanne?
So actually, Bob, that's what I was going to ask, if you would. So when I think of the younger grades, I think a lot about our Tier 1 efforts.
Sure.
So I wonder if you could just talk about a little bit about that, which would be more whole class, small group within the classroom. But I see that as very much a part of our mental health efforts.
Oh, that's a huge, and that was one of the buckets I talked about. Yeah. So we teach social emotional skills much like we teach any academic skill, right? And so we do a lot of very explicit instruction. We give kids lots of opportunities to practice different skills. We have kids practice skills with each other. We prompt kids to use those skills. And so whatever would make a really good academic lesson makes a really good social emotional lesson as well. And that work is really shared between our K-5 educators and also our school counselors, where there are dedicated times, which we'll call SEL blocks, where that explicit instruction is happening. And just like with academic skills, if you do your lesson and then never come back to it, probably not going to be as effective. And so when we're teaching a lesson, for example, like problem solving, and we go back to that over and over and over again, that's what's really powerful for kids. And so we have a lot of really good examples where a teacher might do a second step lesson and then come back to it throughout the week to be able to reinforce that skill.
And how consistently are we using second step?
Really consistently.
So it's pretty much
We have that in
across-
our strategic plan and where we're hitting our goals there, which
Right,
is
that's what I
good.
thought,
Yeah.
yeah. So if I could, just one more. Could you just give a little pep talk to parents, not as parents, but just as adults struggling in this time?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that so much of the anxiety that our children are feeling is because adults are so anxious.
Yeah.
And just put a plug in for adults getting help, maybe through our Department of Public Health. I'm
Sure.
not sure, but just if
Yeah.
you wouldn't mind, just.
Well, 100%, yeah. And
Putting a
what,
plug
this is going to be a very psychologist thing for me to say. But what we know is that when we avoid things, we are so good at avoiding things, very rarely will ever make things better. And so what I say to my children, and they get annoyed with that often, but what I say often is that there wouldn't be such a thing as a psychologist, there wouldn't be such a thing as a social worker if these things weren't treatable. And again, anything that you're able to talk about is going to be treatable. And so we are very privileged in our community where we have a lot of really good mental health resources. And so when you are putting in that investment into yourself, you're going to be able to get the back of that. I would also say, as a parent, being the best version of yourself, you can do it for you, but you're also going to be doing it for your children as well. And particularly if you want kids to not be stigmatized about accessing mental health services, if they're seeing a parent access mental health services, they're going to be far more likely to get the help they need as well.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping to follow up on your response to Mariah's question earlier when you were talking about chronic absenteeism. You seemed to be saying that you thought that that's something that we could reduce by more than half with things that are within our power to do. So I'm really interested in what you think we might be doing, because that's actually a topic that the policy subcommittee has been asked to address through policy. So your thoughts, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I could say, Andy, I guarantee you in 18 months, we're going to be there, right? And so that's sort of, again, longer term work. Where my hope is, if you look prior to 2016, 2017, we don't have the data there, but we're sitting in around 6%, right? So we've been there before. The world has changed. That's absolutely true, right? But even one thing I'll sort of draw folks' attention to is most principals through this time have had, as part of their school improvement plans, attendance, right? And it's been really nice to see, particularly this year, as so many people sort of getting behind it. I think people are sort of getting motivated that, oh, it's working. Okay, we're actually starting to see some improvements here. And so the work of getting kids to school is not easy. It is an every day thing for some families. And there isn't sort of a magic thing here. It's every single day being committed to helping kids get to school. It's from like child lens, adults being really annoying is not letting them just sort of sit at home and be okay with sitting home. And one thing, and I think we've made some nice gains here as well, is framing for parents that if your child's not able to get to school, that's a really big deal. And oftentimes there is a mental health thing behind that, right? And so instead, if you're not able to come to school, that's where we're thinking about higher levels of care. That's where we're thinking about increased school-based support. And so really framing not coming to school as a really big deal is something that I think we can continue to grow in.
So you seem to be talking about mainly outreach to families, both kind of as background, like informing families about the importance of this, and just like acutely, if your kid is not in school that day, like somebody from the school will go there and be annoying.
100%, yeah, and we do. I mean, I was talking with a clinician this morning who they started their day at 7:30 on the phone with a kid that was in their bed that did not want to come to school, and that's what that conversation helped the kid get to school. And again, I think what's really important for parents is this, and this again, it's really hard, but sometimes we'll say, okay, we'll take care of it tomorrow. Okay, they weren't able to get out of bed today, but we'll take care of it tomorrow. And so another thing that we sort of frame is you coming to school for half a day is infinitely better than you not coming to school at all. And we know that kids who do even show up late, you're far more likely to come into school the next day, even if you did had difficulty that day beforehand. And again, the underlying thing that made school hard for you to attend today is not going away tomorrow. So today actually is the good day to go to school. And so we talk about with kids is going to school is a have to. What your day looks like, that's where we can sort of negotiate. Step one is you have to be in the building. And what's great, and I've seen some really good examples of parents, even if their kids are kicking and screaming, if they're crying, sort of trusting us enough to then sort of put kids in our care, and then entrusting us that we're going to do the rest.
I was going to speak next, and then I'll call on you afterwards. So last spring, a couple of members of town meeting showed me the way to sort of understand the risk of vaping THC or different ways of using pot products now, and how they've been linked to psychosis. So I went to read about it, and indeed that plays out in the research. And then I was very pleasantly surprised to see, after the summer went by, and maybe it was you and Carlin, there's now the peer leaders are going to be addressing vaping. Can I go back to these community members and say that that is part of going to be part of the education? Is for parents and students to learn that there's a connection between the high potency of marijuana now and psychosis.
I can't comment. I don't want to. I'll have to look at if we make that explicit connection. So that's there in the research. I don't want to guarantee that specific relationship is in it. So I can take a look, and then I can give you that information.
Great, thank you. Donna?
Actually, if it's okay, want to go backwards to what Andy just brought up in the conversation around school aversion or chronic absenteeism. And let me slow myself down. To what extent do attendance policies, or to what extent do attendance policies either support or reduce or impact school aversion or?
They make a very big deal on the other side in terms of our response. So as an example, at the high school, a policy where your credit earning is impacted by your attendance is a huge lever for kids, right? That there's a certain amount of unexcused absences. If you cross that threshold, your credit is now in jeopardy. I know in middle school that makes it harder where there isn't that lever to pull, right? So kids sometimes struggle to understand what's the bad thing that's happening to me. Like, we understand it, we see it, but they don't really feel it. And so from a policy perspective, that is really, really important. Again, it might not impact the underlying things that are making school become hard, but in terms of those levers that we can sort of pull to help on the other side of it, very, very important. Yeah.
Yes.
This is more of a comment. But I think in the community, there is a lot, or there are many people, not necessarily the majority, but many people who don't understand the relationship between the kind of work that PSB has invested in social emotional learning and mental health support and academic outcomes. And I think it's just really important. I'm not sure that you necessarily said that explicitly, but I wonder if maybe you could say explicit.
I did, so I want to say even more.
Yeah, I want it to be extremely, extremely explicit that you sort of mentioned it here a little bit, but not only are they available to learn, but there is a positive correlation between academic outcomes and all of the work that you are, and there's a huge evidence base for this, it's well researched, and so this isn't like a whimsical activity that we're doing, and this isn't an experiment. This is something that is based in evidence that we are implementing in our school system because we have this strong evidence base.
You said it.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's said out loud.
There is an immense set of literature that explicitly makes that connection. And again, what is important is I think we would all agree that the brain is pretty important. That same thing that's responsible for your mental health is responsible for your ability to concentrate, for your ability to focus, for your ability to remember, right? And so the reason why that relationship exists, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling depressed, it's going to impact those cognitive processes that allow you to learn. And again, we have countless examples of kids who have tremendous academic skills, but this area that allows them to consistently access this is underdeveloped, right? We see that certainly as kids move through high school. We see that as kids are going off to college. that have all the academic skills in the world, but navigating that stressful environment is overwhelming, right? And again, I think what I like to draw to is you think about your own existence, you think about your own work, and you think about somebody who's just nailing their job. Of course, they know a lot of stuff, but so much of that makes them great at their job are these soft skills. How do they solve problems? How do they talk to people when they're feeling frustrated? When things are at their worst, are they at their best, right? And so when you think about these types of skills, of course they're going to impact kids' ability to engage academically, and these are the skills that we're setting them up for the rest of their lives. That's why, again, when you look at just subjective experiences of wellness, people who have strong skills in all these areas have amazing relationships, are walking through their lives feeling like whatever's coming at me, I'm going to be able to navigate it. It might be hard, but I'm going to navigate it, right? And so there's, of course, that connection academically, then just broadly with the types of lives that we want our kids to have, these skills are essential to it. Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to say too that I appreciated when you said earlier, because I think people, there's again, this perception that like, we've decided not to do math today, so we can do these things. And these two things are not being, there. It's not a zero sum in that way. We are able to offer the academics and also offer these things.
Exactly, right. And just an
trade-off.
example of it, of what this sort of instruction will look like is, for example, if you are taking an AP class and your teacher invests 10 minutes in like, here's how you navigate stress. When you're going home and you're doing homework and you're getting really frustrated, instead of tearing it up, take 10 minutes. Here are some thoughts that you can have. Here are some deep breathing so you can return to it, right? A lot of work that, and it's a great academic support, it's a great social emotional, is small group work, right? It's a great strategy to keep kids on task. The skills you learn when you're learning in small groups is pretty powerful. And so again, what we talk about are these both and moves, incredibly strong academic moves, but also really strong social emotional moves, right? And so I appreciate you drawing attention to that again, these are never competing, ever. And if we're investing only in one, we're not doing it right? We have to invest in both, and then when we do, that's just going to result in a better experience for kids. Yeah.
Suzanne?
Well, I absolutely agree. And, one of the words we used before was whole child.
Yeah.
I don't know if we still use that, but the idea is that the child is whole in all ways. And so to only focus on academics or to only focus on a social emotional would not do the child the best that we could do for them. And so, this, again, it's an and both. And also remembering that leadership skills are developed in the classroom, but also in group work, in sports work, in performance arts, in so many ways. That one of the things I really appreciate is that your department works with everybody. And we really do look at the whole child, so thank you for that.
Bella?
Thank you. That was really well done. Thank you. And I feel like there's a lot of data that was presented, but also there's probably like mountains of data that you had to go through to figure out like what you wanted to present. And to do it with such clarity is just really commendable. And I think the members of the committee probably appreciate that you have quite a unicorn in this field and in this work, and to have Matt just come present as a treat to hear your thinking about this. And but I just wanted to I also think it's really interesting that Brookline does their own version. And I think that maybe Matt had something to do with that, about that maybe this is, a model that others should follow. But I've never seen one that was uniquely done by a town. But I wanted to take a step back too, where in Matt's presentation of discrete items to connect it. One thing is, as you look at the data, you know what? Kids don't actually check one box. They usually check a few boxes. So when you look at the data, and some of it feels like that's alarming, actually some of the kids check a few boxes. There's concepts of intersectionality that actually, I don't know what the word is, but it just kind of accelerates or all of that. And so I love the idea of looking at it discretely and skill building. And so that the data on attendance and belonging is really amazing. I don't think any district is seeing data like that. So, but those are, if you pick a couple of things and you move them, I think it impacts all the linear data, but it also impacts all the intersectionality data. This work is very people intensive. And so I'm just gonna say, as we're building and thinking about the budget for next year, that this is probably the area that's very much affected by ratios and the skill of the people that are delivering it. But it is very people intensive, and it's also can be very time intensive, those conversations. So they're often one-on-one, not whole class. It's a combination, but so just really important to hold on. So in the presentations through the fall, just to think about what is at the heart. And this one is very much educator to student intensive. And but also just a big appreciation for what you offer the district in your presentation tonight.
And that appreciation comes from all of us. Thank you.
Oh, it's everything. Again, if you have some time, following around a clinical team for a day is it's literally life-saving work that you are doing. It's hard work, and they get like there'll be days when I'm talking with folks, it's like, man, like you've had like what you dealt with today is so incredibly hard, and they're back in the building at 6:45 the next day, ready to go, and wouldn't choose anything else to do. So it's really easy for me to be inspired every single day in this work, and yeah, just have incredible.
Bob?
I just want to take this opportunity on this topic to just shout out the name Bill Grady, who was the founder of the Opportunity for Change program at Brookline High School. And one of the things that Bill did every morning early was he would call up, that was a program for kids who struggled to be in school, to be successful in school. So early in the morning, he'd call the kids up and sing to them good morning songs. And then after he was finished with that, after communicating with the kids in that way, he would have a van and he would go around and pick up the kids who were struggling to get to school every day. You know, he reminded me sort of he's a social emotional comparison to Jaime Escalante, that amazing calculus teacher in California. Anyway, Bill passed away not too long ago, and I'm thinking about him during this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming to present to us and for leading us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Well, whether we're ready or not, we're going to move on to our budget guidelines. So I'm looking over to you, Mariah.
Thanks. I'm just getting on the Wi-Fi. I was engrossed in this presentation, so I was not preparing for what was next. And I have a new computer, and I'm learning how to navigate finding the Brookline. Here it is. So in front of you, you have two pieces of paper, two documents. One is the next revision of the guidelines that Jesse and I worked on after the group met. And we tried to take feedback from what we were told, and some of the primary changes were shortening some of the wording. We took much, if not all, I can't remember exactly, but much, if not all, of what Donna had presented, and then adjusting the 5 areas below to match the 5 areas of the strategic plan. My hope for tonight, and so I might not even need to join the Zoom, is that we might start to have a deeper conversation about the contents within those 5 sections, rather than focusing on the front or the sections. Look at some of the like 1As, 1Bs, et cetera, and decide if there's things that we are interested in retaining, would like to remove, would like to add et cetera. And I think it's going to take the basis of people making motions. So that's what I'm thinking for the plan. The other document in front of us is Donna went and found some guidelines from other districts. Thank you, Donna, for doing that. And they have different formats. And I think Donna found some fellowship with some of these formats. I don't know if you want to talk about what you liked about some of them, and just mention it to the group, or not. I don't want to put you on the spot, but they were provided, and so maybe you want to talk to that a little bit before we get into our document? Okay, thanks.
I'll just talk in maybe very broad strokes. I am still thinking that we need to have a more, for me, it makes more sense to have a more zoomed out approach. So when I looked at some of these, they resonated for me mainly because I think they didn't get, I mean, as far as I can see, they didn't get into a lot of the specificity. Some of that is left, from my position, I want to leave some of that to the administration to come up with, but still maintain what our priorities are, what our values are. I think the simplicity of some of the documents like made sense to me. So that was just, I really just wanted to see what other districts were doing, what best practices are, how these documents can be like optimized so that the administration can use them. And be able to pivot in a more precise way, I guess. I know I sent them very late, and I'm sorry about that, but if it's helpful, that I thought it would be maybe good context for some of us to look at and see what's happening elsewhere.
I'd really like to hear from Mariah and Jesse on a couple of these things that have come up again and again, and in this latest revision, sort of have you help us see your thinking. So one of the issues that we keep on saying is that we'd like them to be guidelines, simple and short. So I'd like to hear where your thinking is on this current document, if that's being met. And then the other thing I'm wondering if it's being met is enough flexibility for the admin team to go through and do the work that they see needs to be done that maybe is, not our expertise as much as theirs.
I guess I'm going to push back on that a little bit, that the length of the document, I guess, will depend on what people remove from it during the next process that we're going to have.
So that's like what you'd like to go on to is what we're removing.
I mean, I guess structurally, we sort of adhered to what I thought was the guidance of the committee. So what you see in front of you is basically what the committee told us to do, which was shorten up the front, tighten it up a little bit. Again, we used some of Donna's language, and then we adjusted things to teaching and learning. One thing we added that we sort of talked about, but we didn't necessarily vote on it, but because it had come up, we included it, was 1E, which is funding and supporting educational opportunities for students beyond grade level. That was the wording Jesse and I came up with to capture the gestalt of the conversation, we thought. And then just in discussing the original, under 6B, which is the budget scenarios, in discussing this document with members of advisory who had watched our conversation, they thought that we were just basically asking for a bottom line number from the superintendent. And so the only reason this table is here is to sort of make really explicit that we're asking for like each step of your math, like show your math, so to speak, but it's not, I just somehow turned off my computer. There we go. It's not different. But in general, I think, again, we haven't touched the guts of this, and that's where I'd like our conversation to go is, what are we going to remove? I think there's going to be, I don't want to project or predict, but I think that some of these there's robust conversation. I keep using the word robust, but robust conversation to be had about some of these, whether they stay or go. And so I think we should start to get into it and have the conversation.
I would just add, Sarah, that in most of the sections, there are only like 2 items. So we really did pare it down to what we thought were the quintessential elements of what the budget should look like for that particular part of the strategic plan. And it leaves really the administration with a lot of flexibility, I think, in our opinion, in terms of accepting these guidelines, but then, to go further in terms of presenting us with, well-reasoned explanations for why something might be added also fits. There are actually quite a few. I mean, in other words, within each section, the teaching and learning one seems a little bit large because we have three dependent on the override and one dependent on federal funding. So besides that, there are only like 2 or 3. And we tried to keep just to the essential ones, to leave the superintendent with a lot of latitude.
With all respect, I mean, really not trying to push back on you. We have world language, we have summer programming, we have extended school year. It's not.
So why don't you propose something that you think should go? That's the conversation we're having to have. We're not defending the document. Now is the time to have the conversation.
Me? Yep. Oh, okay. So I would propose, Mariah, that we, can you explain to me why, or I don't like having FY '27, FY '28, FY '29, FY '30. So I would propose taking that out.
You mean, why do we stagger this over multiple years?
Well, I was going to start that way, but then I remembered we're talking about, I propose, so I'm proposing that we not do that.
So you're proposing to remove D, E, F, and G from that section?
I thought she was proposing to just remove that from everywhere we tell them where we want
Yes.
something to happen. So,
Well, everything's fiscal '27 except for D, E, F, and G of section 1, right?
Right, the override fund.
Yeah, I would second that, Donna.
Thank you.
so
It's a motion.
I guess my question is, like, we've done this, I think it's, like, that's fine, whatever the committee wants to vote. The point of some of that was to say that this is a multi-year budget guideline, and we're sort of trying to forecast where we might want to go. It's fine with me if we remove these things or remove when the year is, but for example, if we're trying to direct staff who are building a budget, it makes a difference to them whether we're building that in for next year or the year after or the year after, and they need to use this as guidance for budget planning. So does that make sense, Bella? I mean, I guess I would ask you to comment on, if we're giving you guidance, but we don't tell you when we want something to happen, is that more or less helpful?
I think you have to decide, well, if you're gonna have something or not. Actually, I don't. It makes it more complicated in an override year to figure out, are we planning for a program that may or may not happen in the future fiscal years?
So are you saying,
It would be easier to focus on FY '27.
so you do, for this year alone, you basically don't want anything in a future fiscal year? You would only want,
Unless the committee is saying they absolutely want that thing to happen in that future fiscal year. It's just, it takes capacity to develop and cost it out. Yeah.
right? But that, I mean, none of these things should be in here if we don't absolutely want them, right? Otherwise, we're leading you astray, so. I think that, well, go ahead, Donna.
Sorry, Sarah, are you
I was about
calling
to
on
call-
people?
I was about
or-
to call on you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. No, I'm not. I was overstepping.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, so
Sorry, I
I
didn't
thought
realize.
Donna was going to continue to comment on her proposal, which is why I was calling
So
on her.
I
to
think
finish the
that,
thought.
so, for me, when I'm referring now to the Shrewsbury document, and on page 2, it says, one of the bullet points says, is to make investments in district-based programming and resources in order to provide high-quality, cost-effective opportunities to educate students, blah, blah, blah. But I guess I would prefer that type of language under teaching and learning. And then allow the administration, when they're building the budget, to bring specificity to that in the form of a budget proposal.
When I read their document, it's a particular moment in time in that they're doing this in '22 and they're looking forward to strategic planning. So to me, it was a little bit different. It's not to say we can't do this, it's just that, again, I interpret, but we could reframe these to be to consider what could be done for whatever, that's fine too. But I guess then it makes it less about, does the school committee want these things or not? It's a little more vague. I guess, again, it's like, does staff appreciate vagueness or does staff appreciate clarity? Vagueness gives more flexibility, clarity is clear. So,
Stella, do you have any thoughts on that or guidance?
Sorry. I think what you tried to do in the conversation before was to suggest that we use the strategic priorities as guidance. And it's not mentioned here, but I would suggest maybe the core values as guidance. And the budget part, preparation for the override, that's kind of what we said we were gonna do. The specific programs, either the committee wants them or not. Otherwise, we end up taking capacity to cost it out and build it. And so I would say clarity but anyway, strategic priorities or core values would be helpful to us to be able to give us flexibility.
Carolyn.
So in terms of the years, and ultimately, I defer to what works for Superintendent Wong. And I'm sure there will be other places where it's expressed. I guess one thing I think about is that I think, or would guess, that like our corollaries and partners on the town side, when we're talking about an override, like want us to be talking about 3 years because it would be for 3 years. So I'm not necessarily making the argument, but I think that would be an argument for some sort of recognition. I mean, it does say FY '27 through '31, but just throwing that out there that I think sometimes I've heard, like in the past, maybe prior to you being here, like a concern that, yeah, just making sure we're looking ahead and ahead. And then now I'm really thinking about what you're saying about programs, right? Because if we say like, we want this and we want to make sure we have this or restore certain things without knowing the cost and the consequences that you are living with now on the 5th floor of last year's decisions, that's important. So, I think I think I appreciate you saying, you know, if the school committee wants programs, we should say so. But I also think I appreciate at this point in time, knowing some of the consequences that you're working with on the 5th floor, of those kind of insistings or desires. So, and that's not remotely emotion, it's just me sort of thinking out loud and chewing on what you're saying.
The way you laid out the parts of the preparing for the possible override actually allows us flexibility to support the literacy program and MTSS, also to evaluate the program to determine recommendations to support educational equity for all. They're in a way that there's some clarity in the way that is broken out. Oh, really? I don't know. You put numbers in it. Oh, how funny. Anyway, I would suggest in an override year, providing a map might be easiest for people to follow in the messaging that might come. And sorry, I said override year. It hasn't been decided, but we're in anticipation of that, just to think about the messaging and that guidance that people will find accessible.
I think what I'm taking away from that is once we get a little more clarity on other spots, really building that into this table might be affirming of that sort of messaging throughout. Andy?
So do we in fact have a motion on the floor to remove D, E, F, and G from section 1? I thought that Donna had made the motion and I'd seconded, but I'm not sure whether that's official.
You seconded something she didn't make.
Well,
I will make it, but can I
Okay.
amend what I'm saying? And
Wait, hold on. He thinks you're completely deleting out D, E, F, and G. That's what you want to do, is delete out 1D, E, F, G?
Yeah, and potentially, I wanted to ask if does C need to be explicitly in there? Because if students are eligible for extended school year, we have to fund it. So can that be removed as well?
Okay, so
I
wait,
thought
what's
part of the
hold on,
point
can we
of-
get through the first motion that Andy thinks he's
well,
seconded?
I think, Donna's suggesting that maybe that she intended a slightly expanded version.
Yes,
so-
so I'm suggesting if C is essentially superfluous because we have to fund ESY programming for eligible students, that we remove C, D, E, F, and G.
I'm going to split the vote on this one. I
Okay.
think if, unless anyone wants to, we can take it as a block, but I think that there's going to be so much conversation with each one, or at least potentially, that it might make sense to not have a big messy blended conversation, but to do it one by one. Is anyone on the committee opposed to taking those one by one?
You mean D, E, F, and G as one block and C as?
No, I mean,
one?
all of them separately. I mean, I think that like, if we have a conversation that goes for 10 minutes about world language and then goes to summer programming, I'm just trying to keep the conversation in order.
Yeah, I mean, can I say why I thought D, E, F, and G should be cut out as a block?
Sure.
Which is that, I mean, my impression is that even a successful override might leave us in a position where we're still basically struggling to maintain level services. So I really don't want to give anybody the impression that, our purpose in going for an override would be to return world language, to, expand opportunities for students beyond grade level, that sort of thing. We may not be in any position to be doing that, even with a successful override. And I don't want to suggest to the town or to anybody that, that's our purpose.
Bob?
Thank you, Mariah. I want to strongly agree with what Andy just said. I think that we have such constraints on the budget going forward that we have, to me, I look at maintaining reasonable class sizes at the high school and the elementary school is by far the most important component of our budget, because that's where the return on the investment is greatest. And then, so to sort of go down the line on the other items, we have to protect the basics that we've been struggling to protect in past years. And so I strongly agree with Andy, and I want to strongly support communicating to the community that we will be responsible for investing in what research demonstrates is all about the development, the academic and social emotional development of our kids. And so to go, to look at 28, 29, say we're going to, we're going to go back and create a robust foreign language program in the midst of, these dramatic constraints, makes me very uncomfortable. I'm proposing to stick with the basics right now and also allow Bella Wong, as she expressed in her interviews for this position, to maybe, move toward taking a look at a zero-based budgeting concept. Like instead of assuming that everything in the budget is what we want, let's step back. I don't know if we can do that yet, but I think that's most important, to give us an opportunity to really focus on what absolutely impacts the development of our children.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Bob, the motivation for Mariah and I to add, to keep these things in was Bella's multiple times saying that she wants to or she intended to have some restoration of programming that had been removed due to prior budget cuts. We're trying to be respectful to her stated desire of trying to add some restoration, at the same time completely agreeing with you that we're going to be, and I think that's something our entire committee feels along with you, that we're going to be fighting constrained financial resources for the next couple of years, especially in a more partnered environment with the town, and and they're watching our finances more carefully, and at the same time, as you say, maybe beginning to work on, as the committee that will actually work on the narrative to create for the override will do, to explain what this situation is and what the parameters are, and where we can really play and not. So we were trying to be respectful to this idea about restoration, and that's why those were left in and left as for as a contingency. But I'm 100% on board with you that if we're not going to promise more than we know we can do, that we should actually. It's not a question of scaling back. It's just be realistic, I think. Yes.
I just want to modify what you said a little bit about our intentions, which is I don't think this wording was mostly legacy wording. I don't think I want to impose that we want to imply that these are things that the staff said they definitely want to do and that it was going to be in the restoration. So I just as a clarity point, in case anyone might think that. Go ahead, Bella.
So I appreciate that you were thinking about what I said. But for me, I was thinking restoration of discrete positions, because so many were eliminated, and evaluating, because along with the positions went functions. And so it was that I might need to revisit that. With respect to a program that the committee deliberated on, I didn't feel actually it was my position to presume that should be revisited or not, that was entirely within the body of the school committee to decide if they wanted to do that. But I think that was something that the committee as a whole had
Thanks for the
deliberated.
clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Suzanne?
I agree that we probably do not want to promise things that we don't know that we can deliver on. And so I'm not sure that, maybe it's someplace, if we do an override where we make suggestions of what's possible with the override money, but that we don't commit to that yet, because it's really going to be hard to commit to 2 years out, I think, at this point. I am, though, thinking about whether we keep C or get rid of C, I would like to see the educational equity piece under teaching and learning. Maybe it could also be under climate and culture, but it's really, much of it is about our teaching and learning and how we provide the resources we need to do to make that happen.
I'm ready later when we're done with this conversation to make a motion for that, and I have some wording.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's hold on that one. So go ahead, Carolyn.
So I think I probably agree with what Suzanne just said directionally, and likewise, in terms of 1E, which I also appreciated directionally. I didn't love the beyond grade level. That wasn't wording that made total sense for me, but I did appreciate sort of I think it's important to have, and maybe, I don't know if we can have this if it isn't connected to programming, but we have lots of things that aren't connected to specific programming, but I wouldn't like to lose that sort of reference to the need to provide opportunities at the full range of student needs, including accelerated opportunities, or whatever the right wording might be.
So if we were to vote, G doesn't actually have any financial timeline or impact. It's just something for us to not lose on our minds, or like not lose I really am incoherent at this point, not lose sight of. So I guess I wonder why it needs to be removed, given that there's no financial implications and no one's being asked to cost out anything. But I could see a very plausible thing, and I'm sort of thinking about what people are saying about concern about cost and promises, and I'm also hearing what Bob is saying about having our staff have the flexibility to perhaps also see within their priorities of what could sort of provide the greatest return on investment for academics, and what you're saying, Carolyn, about not losing this sort of opportunity for accelerated learning. If we could sort of condense this all into, like, maybe it goes under the evaluating the program, it's just basically under that budget number 10. And if there is additional funding in there, staff can really say to us, we've heard your conversations and we think we can build in blah, whatever blah is. And we're sort of relying on their professional judgment and what they've heard of our conversations and our priorities and our interest in academic rigor and opportunity for all students and all of these things, to have them figure out where they could make those investments for the biggest impact. Does that sort of so to me, that would make sense, but there'll be people in the community who will feel quite upset to see some of these things go away. I'm stating the obvious, but I'll just say, if they're not a priority for a year, that's a loss for some people. I would just ask that if we are going to vote, that we don't include C for now, that we have a conversation just about that for a moment, because I think there's a history there we want to talk about, and that G be stricken as a friendly amendment, since there's no cost, no implication for students. It's just sort of a long-term goal of ours to not lose track of. But I would vote for something that removed D, E, and F, again, with this idea of it would sort of be probably explicitly stated, but with staff flexibility under the budget area. It's already almost there. It's just like a little bit more under that. Is that, Donna, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in my thinking, I want this document, or I think that this document very clearly, it's not meant to be an idea tracker. It's really meant to be budget guidelines. So in that sense, I don't see why G needs to stay. I mean, if funds become available for universal pre-K, we're all going to jump at it, and it's what we're all going to know. It'll become a conversation. And so I think it's important that we stick to the purpose of this document. That was my thinking.
So is the motion in front of us D through G or C through G? Hang on one sec. I just want to get clarity. What are you and Andy voting in, or
I'm happy to do D through G and then take C separately.
Yes, that's also what I thought I was seconding.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Bob, and then we're going to take a vote.
Yeah, I just want to say that the issue of accelerating students, to me, should be built into the concept of educational equity. And I know that Superintendent Wong has on numerous occasions say, I think that our system is about every child, every child, every child. And I think that, which one is the acceleration? So I would blend that into a statement on educational equity somewhere in here, so that the community is clear that, because there's all sorts of confusion about what educational equity is all about. And actually, at some point, I would like to have a long conversation about what educational equity is, because there's all sorts of misconceptions and misinformation about it. But my understanding of educational equity is whoever's walking in the schoolhouse door, each one is as important as the next one, and taking care of each of those kids' needs, academic, social, emotional needs, as best we can, that is educational equity. So I would like that to be acknowledged in this document.
Bob, how do you vote on removing D through F, or D through G? I'm sorry, D through G. One D through G.
I vote yes.
Okay, we'll come back to Carol and Andy.
I vote yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Is Val still online?
Yes, and yes.
And yes, okay. And I guess I vote yes, and I guess we will see if Carolyn wants to vote when she comes back. Okay, let's talk about C. So I just want to give a little bit of the history of C, which was ESY did not necessarily have as I'm going to use the word robust again. It's my word of the evening. I'm sorry. it was not as perhaps, there wasn't as much happening during ESY, and so there was this goal to have it be a little bit more significant. And so I think the day ended up becoming an hour longer a couple years ago as a result of this, and there was some opportunities for SEL and other things that were happening. I think that that's been baked into, Karen, if you don't know if you want to comment, but it's now in the IDEA budget. I think the intent too was to ensure that we had stronger participation, because a lot of people maybe were not able to participate or found it a short day and that they did not participate, which defeats the purpose of ESY. Do you want to comment on whether or not having 1C about funding, continuing to fund extended school year, do you think it's helpful or not helpful in terms of how you plan for budgeting in future years? Do you want me to read it to you again, just so you have it? Okay. So it's continue for FY27, fund ESY programming for eligible students with disabilities that increases access to ESY by providing coordinated wraparound opportunities, including but not limited to social-emotional learning, therapeutic recreational activities, and enrichment. And so I guess the question is, if we removed that, would you do something differently with ESY?
But can I just,
Yeah.
sorry to reframe, my question is more, is it even necessary because we're providing that to students who are eligible?
But we were not providing the wraparound opportunities before, and that was particularly the change that was made. Okay, go ahead. And
I mean, what I was going to say is no. I mean, if you removed that, we would still continue.
not just at the the previous level, but you would sort of maintain status quo?
Yeah. So I don't know what the previous level was.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some enhancements that we would like to make to ESY just based on, my observations this past summer. So I don't, I can't really speak to what it was. But, I think ESY should always have all of those components.
Okay, great. So are you going to make the motion to remove 1C?
Let me turn on my mic. I would like to make the motion to remove 1C.
Is there a second?
Sure, seconded.
Okay, we'll start at that end of the room. Donna?
I vote yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I am going to vote abstain. And I guess I realized this was probably when Carolyn was stepping away for her. Okay, yes, yeah. So I won't wait for her to come back. So we've removed C through G. Do we want to go to the conversation about 3A and the educational equity strategy? Oh, go ahead, Sarah. I see your hand.
that's
Oh, is
what I
that
was
what you want
gonna
to do?
speak to.
Okay.
Is that okay to do?
Yeah, before you read your revision. Sure, they already brought this up, I want to do this. For 3A, I think that there was a history here in that the office was established, and the year after Janae left, and there was the letter provided by Janae, and we had Claire in the role. We were at a crossroads with the work of the office. Janae had provided a letter that highlighted some of the things that possibly needed to change to make the work of the office and the work of the school district sustainable. And there was a lot of conversation about, and it's alluded to here, is an office of two people going to do educational equity, quote unquote, for a district? Or is this something that really needs to be considered to be decentralized in the building? It goes to some of the conversation that's been going on in the community. So what we asked for was that the strategy be articulated by the office, but that it didn't necessarily, and again, this was a budget thing. It said, maybe your budget's too small, maybe it's too big, maybe it's in your office, maybe it's not. But that the strategy was going to be articulated by the office, and we were going to approve that strategy. But it did not, this is not about education, whether or not we do educational equity. It was specifically the way that this office was going to articulate it. I do not believe, because we carried this forward multiple years, that we ever necessarily had this strategy laid out to us in this way. I think that I think that your perspective, Dr. Wong, is that we are maybe not doing this sort of in the leadership. Obviously, we don't have the office now. And as Bob mentioned earlier, your perspective that you've said to us many times is this idea of equity as an educational equity strategy is carried out through, say, a broader way of giving students what they need wherever they are. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, so I guess I just want to give this history. Like, if we were to delete this, it's not saying we're not doing educational equity, right? It's saying that, that specifically it was the strategy that was going to be developed by this office. So you're shaking your head no, Suzanne, but that is what happened when we had the conversation when we initially
No,
put
I'm
this in.
sorry, it's not about what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're suggesting we eliminate it. I was suggesting we move it.
It could be. I'm just saying if we change the words or whatever. I guess my point is that like this statement here was specifically about a budget issue from several years ago. It's not about a district commitment to educational equity. It might be a change in how it's approached. I don't know yet, and we're going to have that conversation. I just want to make sure that people realize that if we change the wording or something else.
I mean, I see climate and culture more as the work that Matt does. And so, providing adequate human resources for the social emotional needs of our children, our students, and our families. I mean, that to me is more climate and culture.
Okay.
Educational equity, I think, is under teaching and learning. So
Anyway, okay, well, now I think we can get to Sarah's revised wording if you're ready, Sarah, unless you want to make a comment on that, yeah. Bella?
To you in there.
I was curious what you had to
Okay,
say.
and then
I
you'll,
thought,
okay,
yeah.
great. So Betsy, would be okay if I read out wording and have you capture it? Does that work? So the idea is I would like to move what is currently 3A up to join the other A, B, and C, sorry, A and B under teaching and learning. And I would like it to start with continue for fiscal year 27. And then the wording after that would be commit to an educational equity strategy with resources directed towards educational equity to align with the system-wide goals. With resources directed towards the educational equity to align with the system-wide goals. Want me to read it in full again? Yes. Commit to an educational equity strategy with resources directed towards educational equity to align with the system-wide goals.
Did you have a approved by school committee or no?
I didn't.
Is that a motion? Is there a second?
second.
Okay, Bella, I want to give you the opportunity to comment now.
I think, so when I think it's a really important objective. And
Your mic isn't on, I don't think, Bella.
oh, yes, thank you. Sorry. I think that's it, that Sarah is described a really important objective. And I think it's okay to leave it in there, and we will endeavor to do this. It's about whether we have leadership capacity to develop it, but I think I'm okay to leave it, and we will see what we can do, if that makes sense.
Leave it as it was, or you're saying endorsing the revised wording provided by Sarah?
Endorsing the revised wording.
Okay.
I think it's a really, as I said, it's a really critical objective. And, but in reality too, I'm just saying honestly, because if you think about the positions that were eliminated within the district level, but I think you should leave it and we will try.
Donna?
I think maybe building a little bit on what you're saying, Bella, I wonder if we can consider adjusting the wording slightly, and I understand that there's a motion on the floor, so that it reads, advancing the district's commitment to, I can't remember some of the last sentence, but advancing the district's commitment to our core value of equity instead of mandating a sort of like, I don't know, I wonder if that sort of allows a little bit more flexibility, but also,
And your wording goes at the beginning or at the end?
yes, I think, I didn't write down what you said, so, but I would,
That would allow us
Yeah.
flexibility to develop a strategy if we could do it.
Right,
But also
exactly.
allow us to do what we can under, under that umbrella.
and I think it opens up, I think it opens us up to thinking about educational equity in the way that Bella has been talking about it for every student, and in the way that Suzanne is talking about it, where it doesn't belong in one specific place in our schools. It's everywhere throughout our schools. So, I don't know, that's
would
just a
be-
suggestion.
Amenable to that modification?
So it was advance and instead of commit to and?
It was advance the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity, or even taking out core value.
Are you going to rewrite the whole thing then?
No, I don't remember the last part, that's why it was hard.
Oh, okay.
So it's advance the district's commitment to educational equity with resources directed towards educational equity to align with the system-wide goals? We don't need to have educational equity twice, right?
So,
You would like me to take out educational equity twice? It was there twice in the original.
Just leave it in once, yeah. Yes,
not so robust there.
exactly.
Do you want Betsy to read what she has?
Well, I have a couple different things. So, I don't know where we'll land, but Sarah had said, commit to an educational equity strategy with resources directed to educational equity that align with system-wide goals. And then Donna had advancing the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity. And then I wasn't sure if that was then going to lead into.
And I think you take out the second towards educational equity, so it's not redundant.
So advance the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity to align with system-wide goals, or? Yes.
No, but keep with resources directed. Oh, you guys want to get rid of with resources directed as well? That I'm not.
I like the wording that
okay with
Betsy
that.
just used, advancing the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity to align with system-wide goals.
I think we just have a wording problem. I think that I could rewrite it with some more time, keeping in with resources directed, and I could eliminate the double, educational equity.
I think,
The resources thing is important maybe because it's funded, so the
Yeah.
budget would speak about
Exactly.
funding something. I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
I think we have more than a wording problem. I think that there's, my struggle with a lot of what has happened over the past 6 to 8 months is that we have reduced funding by a significant amount for this area. We now have, we at least had tactics before, and most of those have, at least from the, as articulated by the office, have gone away. I worry that we are patting ourselves on the back for retaining educational equity while having reduced funding, reduced staffing, and just saying, look, we're still doing educational equity. So I think that I would like to see something here that is really specific. I guess aligning with the goals. I mean, it's just a lot of platitudes in my opinion. So it's not a criticism of what you're coming up with. It's a criticism of where we are at this point in time and what has happened over the past 6 to 8 months.
I'm willing to take away my motion and to reword it, but I do want to align with our system-wide goals. And I don't think that that's a platitude. That is important to me because we have a commitment to equity that's gone back and is throughout our strategic plan. And I would like there to be reference to that.
So what's the motion on the floor, and was there a second?
I've taken the motion away, so there's no motion on the floor, but I am willing to rewrite this.
Do we want to go to a different topic and have you come back to us when
Can
you're
we
ready?
move Betsy's language?
Sure. Can you read it again, Betsy? And maybe even if Sarah doesn't want to move it, someone else might? Whatever it is.
I
can
will
someone read
move it then. Advancing the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity to align with system-wide goals.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we want to have more conversation on that wording, or are we going to proceed to a vote? And I presume this is commensurate also with it moving from 3A to 1C, the new 1C. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I just want to make sure that we don't lose some of the details somehow in the big picture. And so we've talked for many years about disproportionality, about opportunity gaps, about testing gaps, about whatever they are. There are big gaps in some of our criteria and some of our data. And I just don't want to lose that focus. And I don't want it to be so general that we don't still attend to that. And so I'm not sure how to do that, but that's my concern.
I am with you.
Can we add a
110%.
sentence after, or can we add a word? I don't know if I'm allowed to do that after I make a motion, but.
You can
So-
friendly amend it
Okay,
yourself.
okay. So that it reads, advancing the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity to align with the system-wide goals of reducing disproportionality,
That would make me feel better.
yeah. So whatever, like, if that brings more specificity to the goals that we're trying to address.
So this is a statement that doesn't have any reference to resources and doesn't have any reference to funding.
Go ahead, Bob. Thank you for sighing loudly, so I could, go ahead.
I just want to unequivocally state my historical and current and future commitment to educational equity. It is my it's my deepest belief that schools have to demonstrate educational equity. But I push back on Mariah, if you don't mind, when you imply that for example, the elimination of the Office of Educational Equity is backtracking. Because two things. One, if you remember Janae Utaro's letter, which I think you do, her powerful statement was that don't expect this office to accomplish what you're wanting us to accomplish. We can't do it. She said that. And then if you look at the data over the past many years, when we had an Office of Educational Equity, the data does not support the existence of that office. And I think that was part of the conversation that we've had. The data shows that the most important investment that we can make is, as I said before, in teachers, in class size, and support, both academic and social emotional support. That, to me, is the foundation of educational equity. And so I don't want to go on down the road bemoaning the loss of the Office of Educational Equity. I'm sorry. And I acknowledge that people will say, oh, there's a degree of racism or something like that, that it's controversial. But I will stand tall in stating that to accomplish educational equity, there are school-based ways to do it when we invest in the people in the system who make the biggest difference in the academic and social emotional development of each of our children.
I'm just going to say that I think that we don't need to get into it, but there's, for example, there's now a gap in some of the coordination that we've had, and not to pick on you, Robin, but we talked about the equity leads at a recent meeting, and the question, was like, who's overseeing the equity leads? And we didn't necessarily have the answer. And I think that there's like, what are they doing? We didn't necessarily have the answer, right? So what are we doing here? What's happening at the school level? on some of these things to the extent, I think it's great that we have a strategy, who's going to deploy the strategy, how does the strategy work? I think all of those things are important. I appreciated what Suzanne said about adding some of the specific language back. There was a focus there which disappears in the wording, and I appreciate, Donna, your ideas of bringing some of that wording back as well. So go ahead, Donna. And
Hold, please. I was just going to ask Suzanne what language she would want to put in at the end.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
Oh.
I'm sorry. But I just will point out that our benchmarks on our goals specifically address specific groups of students and demographics. So we have in our goals that we will measure our success by looking at different criteria that we've set up as benchmarks. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be in here, but I want to make sure that we're not so generic that we're beyond, that we skip over what our benchmarks are on our goals.
So does that mean you're saying it's superfluous to, we're just being repetitive by specifying it? Or are you saying?
No, I'm saying we need to say, maybe not just system-wide goals, but system-wide benchmarks.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe
Or
would that
could
help?
we say benchmarks that are articulated in our strategic plan, Suzanne? Would that work?
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make sure we have reference to it, because that is our work. We've been very clear about what our work should be. We're not clear on how we're going to get there, but we're clear about what the work needs to be.
Well, just to add then, Suzanne, in the first paragraph of the guidelines, in a second paragraph that talks about the primary guideline, it already says everything that we just said. It says, number one, there are the activities described in the strategic plan, and Ryan and I referenced the link so anyone can get to it. And then clearly identified in budget, yes, and described in their narrative to be measured against the benchmark set in the strategic plan. I think Mariah and I went through, after Donna's presentation last time, we went through the strategic plan in one window while we were looking at the document and tried to make sure we'd have those elements in there. So I think adding in details, this sort of, I think I'm aligning with what Bob said earlier, but just to say aligning details like disproportionality or historically underserved populations tends to place educational equity in a certain box, and there's a lot of discussion and feelings about that one, rather than to say we have benchmarks, and the benchmarks that we've agreed upon as a district in the current strategic plan should be the ones we measure our progress against.
And so I would like on this equity to refer to
Again,
that.
same.
Yeah.
So I was just going to read back where we are so that we can all keep track. Advancing the district's commitment to our core values of educational equity to align with system-wide benchmarks articulated in our strategic plan. Is that what you meant, Val?
Did we lose
Did you
resources?
mean value singular, by the way? You said it. Core value or value?
Core value of educational equity. I think that's what Val meant when I was typing while she was talking.
Yeah, I was talking about the benchmarks that articulate what Suzanne was talking about, right? Like we have metrics and benchmarks.
No, I think I was asking if my sentence captured what the change
Yeah,
you
I think it did.
suggested. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you read it again, please?
Yes, I would love to.
Thank you.
Advancing the district's commitment to our core value of educational equity to align with system-wide benchmarks articulated in our strategic plan.
Bella?
That's a great statement. I'm just not sure if it's a budget guidance statement. I'm not sure how I am supposed to address that statement in creating the budget. So, and I will say again too, if you look at ultimately clarity of message in preparation for the override. I think the committee members are expressing a commitment to things that are good for the students that you would want to be reflected in our programs. I don't know if it's being conflated with what we need for our budget guidance.
Well, part of the problem is that we've eliminated the office that we're saying we're trying to say to you as a superintendent and to the district leaders that we would like to see this work continued. And it's a little bit confusing because we've eliminated the ability to be able to do it. So if we put something in that's general, does that allow you to come back with a solution for us of how we continue with an equity strategy?
I think so. It's just when you said, when there's a part about metrics, and I'm thinking, how am I dealing with that in the budget?
Can I make one suggestion that might work, which is rather than advancing, but is it something like clearly identify in the budget which elements are contributing to an educational equity strategy? And that way it's really like the product could be, we're spending, these are the programs that specifically contribute to the strategy, and whether or not there's a dollar amount, I don't know if, you want to say, because at some point everything does, but like maybe you're just pointing to, these are the things. I don't know if that works, but it's at least like, it's something that we could say, check, I've done that, like we're asking you to do this, and it's something that's achievable. Whereas the current wording is, to your point, it's not a budget activity.
We could do that. And again, I'm going to ask you what you want that document to look like as you message for an override.
So
We need to decide what that looks like now. I think
we don't, okay.
wording. Is that what we want? Is that what we're asking staff for, is to essentially clearly identify the resources that are being,
Which was in the
Programs and
original. The
resources.
original said resources.
that's right, the
Yeah.
programs and resources, whether they are centralized or decentralized. What are the things that are being done to support this core value?
So maybe we go back to some of that.
Well, it's not funding the educational strategy, it's identify the items in support of an educational strategy, and identify the items in support of the educational equity strategy.
By items, do you mean resources?
Programs, resources.
You meant budget items, like budget line items, which. could be
Budget line
vehicles.
items?
Could be
Yes.
Program, could be staffing.
Right,
could be
exactly.
Can you
Dashboards.
repeat the rest again? Identify the budget line items.
Yeah, identify the budget items that, the resources that support educational equity. I don't know. I'm just looking at what was written and trying, like, we spent a lot of time on this wording a while ago. So yes, identify the budget items that support the educational,
Equity strategy.
or the educational equity goal. There was a goal, yes.
Yeah.
Donna?
Okay, I'm not trying to be difficult or argumentative, but now I'm a little bit confused because wouldn't that then just be like, kind of like a question that we ask when the budget is presented and not necessarily a budget guideline?
Well, I think we're asking for it not to be something we have to ask a question about. We're asking it to be presented very clearly. I'm just thinking,
Yeah,
like, that's, it's just not something we want to be a question. We want it to be already answered.
I think we want it as a guideline.
Yeah, what was the first word of
Right.
the sentence now?
I think it was identify.
Maybe you wanted to use include, and that way it handles Donna's question, because that way the budget has, we anticipate it being included and identifiable.
Include and identify educational.
Well, no, then the rest of what Mariah said.
My only concern is like, and this is sort of what Bella's pointing to, the budget has a very specific structure. Now, in the beginning, there's an overview, a superintendent's, message. And so perhaps that could be, educational, I'm not writing it for you on the fly right now, but educational equity is important to me, and these are the specific programs that I see as being critical to advance that, or, something like that.
Be best to meet the needs of all students.
Yeah, or, however that looks like. Susan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Just as a potential way forward, how about identify the programs funded in the budget that support the educational equity goals outlined in the strategic plan?
Thank you, Susan. Does someone wish to move that
Wait,
language?
can you read that again, Susan?
Sure. Identify the programs funded in the budget that support the educational equity goals outlined in the strategic plan.
Bob?
See, once you start talking about programs, what you're losing is the fact that educational equity happens every day, 180 days a year, in classrooms and support rooms. You know, once you start saying we're going to have a program here and a program there, which we do have, you know, we have the African American Scholars Program, we've got tutorial, but we have plenty of programs. But to me, again, I keep coming back to the concept of educational equity, you know, and the main program that we have to bring about educational equity happens every day in classrooms. If we're doing a really good job of great teaching and learning, that's where educational equity happens. You know, educational equity is all about getting kids to the highest levels that they can get, every kid. You know, and you have to have, you know, to me, if you have everybody performing at a very high level, then they feel like they belong because their job is school. And when you are successful at your job, which is school, you feel like you belong in a school. When you're not succeeding, then you don't feel like you belong. And I want to, you know, push that idea. Instead of, you know, educational equity, I want us to understand what it is. And I think, you know, we're going to have programs for educational equity. Well, to me, it's very simple. Great teaching and learning, great support. That's educational equity. You know, we don't, you know, I'm sorry, I'm just belaboring this.
Can I say, though, we just had this wonderful presentation by Matt Dubois where social emotional learning happens throughout the day, and he could point to very specific things, programs, Cartwheel, the addition of the social workers, and on and on. He gave us 2 slides of his theory of change and had very specific things that he called out as highly contributing to what was going on. And so, you know, I wonder, like, yes, and there's very specific things that can be done and be implemented that could be pointed to.
Yeah, I mean,
just like he pointed to the 9 social workers that were a budget investment, and he thinks made the staffing to do a lot of that work.
It's a holistic approach to every child. And what you just described is critical, essential for the emotional well-being of many, many kids. I guess, you know, again, what I'm reacting to is, okay, we're going to have a program for educational equity. The school system is a program for educational equity.
Sarah and then Suzanne.
I'd like to move Susan's wording for educational equity.
Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, then Suzanne, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it's not that I disagree with you, Bob, and we also know that the data shows that we don't do as well for some groups of students as others. And we have made a commitment to address the needs of some of those students.
All of the students.
I understand that.
Those are some of the students.
I understand that.
And
but-
we've also been struggling with this issue for decades, forever.
Right, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop struggling with it. We're going to call it out, and we're going to see what we can do to do better by some of those students.
I agree with you, Suzanne.
So, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
I'm saying, and let's call out where it is that we are not doing as well as we could be, as we are for some of the other students. Is there something we can be doing? Can we rethink things? Can we commit some money? What is it that we need to do? I mean, it's,
we need to have that conversation.
yeah, I agree. And that's why I want to put it in part of our budgeting guidelines. 'Cause I think it's that important.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead,
I-
Jesse.
I hear you. Thank you, Maura. I agree with you, Suzanne, but I agree with Bob that it really shouldn't be narrowed into programs or narrowed into services. It needs to be articulated within the budget, perhaps, as we are an enterprise and I'm sure it'll be in your letter because you've mentioned it a few times, Bella. We are an enterprise focused on helping every single child that moves through our door achieve their highest potential. And then let great teachers and all the support systems help to make that happen. So that's why a program unnecessarily limits the scope of what we'd like the budget to do in the district as a whole.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about programs, but I just, do we need to go back to fair is not equal, right? And so if you need an extra step to see over the fence, we're going to give it to you. I mean, that's right. And so I think Val's hand is up.
It is. I was just waiting for you to stop talking. Go ahead, Val.
So I'm just gonna push back on what Jesse said a little bit. I mean, I think it's a both and, right? Like, yes, it's in the classroom, but we also know, based on what Suzanne said, that there are groups of kids who need some intervention because we are disproportionately not serving them well, or they're disproportionately performing not as well on standardized exams and things like that. So I absolutely think that we should keep our scholars program. I absolutely think we should keep our tutorial. I absolutely think that Steps to Success is a critical program. So these are programs, right? And so I do, and they support kids learning. They support those kids getting to school and being able to be in the classroom and have a sense of belonging. And if you don't get there, then you can't ever get to what's happening inside the four walls of the classroom. So I do think that it's a both and. And whatever the math program is that we're going to be doing that we're not going to call the calculus project, like that math program helps young people of color and has for a long time. So we don't need to call it out per se, but I do think we need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater and say it, there no programs, because some of our programs, our MEDCO program, do wonderful things.
Before I call on you, Donna, I'm just going to add that it's not just about programs, too. It's about things like the professional development in implicit bias and differentiated, classroom instruction and all the things we're doing to support the educators to deliver the education in the classroom. And those are things that are contributing to educational equity. And they're not a program, but they are supporting all students, and they're really important, too. Go ahead, Donna.
So to that end, I actually was going to suggest replacing the word program with mechanisms.
How about resources?
Resources, okay, great.
Yeah.
Which was our earlier, was find resources. Okay, so Betsy.
Identify the resources funded in the budget that support the education equity goals outlined in the strategic plan.
Can you read it again? We're letting it wash over us.
Funded in the budget that support
Somebody with a mic read it.
We've adjusted Susan's original motion. Identify the resources funded in the budget that support the educational equity goals outlined in the strategic plan.
Susan, I see your hand up.
Friendly amendment. How about identify the resources included in the budget that support the educational equity goals outlined in the strategic plan?
Okay, right.
So I would move that language if it needs moving.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Do we need any more talk, or are we ready to vote?
Can we read it one more time?
Wait, actually, can I just ask Bella and Susan, does that give you the direction that you need without sort of mandating or being overly prescriptive?
I'm going to assume because Susan proposed the language that she thinks that we can work with it. Susan?
Throwing it back to her.
I do.
Okay,
I
great.
feel like I have a sense of how we would construct a response when we're preparing the budget, response to this guideline based on that language.
Can I just clarify, are we moving this to 3 I mean, to
1C, that's, yep.
1C.
Yep, so it would move to 1C and it goes in. I'm ready to start voting. Oh, Jesse, last
Yeah,
word.
just one question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Before we read one more time, Susan, can you just clarify what you see included under the word resources? Susan?
I would say, I guess as I'm thinking about it, listening to you, would it not be the strategies? I would include programs in that because there are many programs that are equity focused, but there are also some strategies that we fund. And so it's calling those out so that the community, as well as the school committee, is clear about the work that we're doing in order to support this important objective.
Donna?
I just, again, to build on what Susan's saying, and Jesse to add more color to that, I'd say that also, I've forgotten what I was going to say, but basically, I think it just strengthens, for example, some of also the work with like in literacy and other, some of the multi-tier systems of support, some of that work as well, you know.
And PD.
Robert?
Yes, yes.
Mariah,
Yes, sir.
is AP, Advanced Placement, an equity program?
I think,
I'm just asking.
no, I mean, I personally think that there is a strong sense in the community that we are not serving our students who, as well as we could be, and I'm not necessarily calling out AP in general, but in general, there could be more accelerated learning. I liked the way Carolyn rephrased it earlier, accelerated learning. I would say, I don't know if I personally would count AP in that bucket, but I think that the idea of offering learning opportunities no matter where a student is, whether it's at AP, whether it's because we're going to start, I don't even want to speculate. There's a whole bunch of different things like the MOU with, was it Mass Bay Community College and being able to offer college program at the high school. There's a whole bunch of different ways that equity looks to me, and AP is certainly on the spectrum.
Okay.
You know, I'm not sure that I would call out any of our gen ed programming the way it is as being particularly under the equity bucket. That's just, I mean, I think that like you have to draw a line somewhere, right? And so, you know,
I would call AP an equity program because it serves certain kids, a lot of kids.
I hope that you heard when Mariah said to you, yes, and before. I don't think that what we're putting in the budget right now precludes what you said. I absolutely think that defining what equity is best practices for having educational equity. So I don't think that this is a, you know, like, we stand here and you stand there. I think it's a yes and.
No, it's a clarifying question that I had.
It's an important one. I think that when we're dealing with the budget, we don't need to tonight get to this definition, but I do think that we at some point do need to get to the definition.
Thank you.
okay, we're going to start voting now. Put down your hands if they're up because we're done with this one. Bob, how do you vote?
I have to hear the motion again, I'm sorry.
Betsy, do you mind reading it one final time? Everyone put your listening ears on.
So again, it's moving to 1C, and it will now read, identify the resources included in the budget that support the educational equity goals outlined in the strategic plan.
I vote yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes?
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
I'm going to abstain. Okay, we have now gone to 1 through C, 1A through C. We have 2A. I think, Donna, you wanted to talk about 2A. Is that correct? Was that, okay.
Before I talk about that, I just want to say I'm really pleased at how we're moving through this.
That's why I was hoping, when you were all talking about other things, I was like, let's just get to it.
Well, I don't mean the speed. I mean, I know you appreciate speed and efficiency, but I just mean also the conversation.
Yeah.
And also that we're able to align and get on the same page. Can you give some background to 2A because it's
Policy.
that would be helpful for me to
Policy 2
understand
years
it.
ago discussed a policy, it was started being called Life of the School, and I think it ended up being called Policy on the Life Outside of School. And it had to do with essentially programming that happens in the school building, serving only school students of that school, or almost exclusively students of that school, but is not operated by PSB. So for example, enrichment programs offered by PTOs or by other vendors or whatever. And students who needed extra support to participate in those, in particular, were not, because of the funding structure of those programs, there was no funding in the enrichment program that might be run by the PTO on a volunteer basis to, for example, fund the participation of the aid that the student might need to be able to participate in these programs that other students in the school were participating in. And so the question was, should we have a policy to basically ensure access of these students' participation? Beyond, I see Val, your hand is up, but I think we had an executive session and about this policy, and I don't want to necessarily get into more of it beyond that, but I'll say that that's sort of the history there. And Val, if you want to add more, go ahead.
No, actually, if Karen is there, I just was hoping that Karen could give us an update on how this is going right now and our mandates right now.
You mean, has the law changed? What do you mean by our mandates?
Well, I'm hoping that we're implementing the law, and I just want Karen to reaffirm for me that we are implementing the law.
Can you give me a little more context?
Yes, for students to participate fully in, programs that we have in our schools, around our schools, after school programs, things like that, are colloquially called the life of the school. Sports, dances, after school.
Val, I think we just need 1 minute before answering. She can't see what's happening.
I think this is, so this is about things that are happening in the school, but they're not being run by the school. They're being run by other parties. And so this policy would to ensure, because they're in the school, that we.
Can I maybe take this a little bit of a different way? Which is the question that Karen's being asked to answer right now does not have anything to do with our budget situation right now, with this particular budget guideline. And so maybe we don't have to put Karen on the spot to answer this particular question. Maybe we focus on the guideline in front of us, which is the policy, which is not about our current practice. I just want to put that out there as a way to redirect the conversation a little
I
bit.
understand the way you're trying to redirect it, but I think you're
Yeah.
trying to redirect it in a way that's too broad and could be and is potentially a budget buster as opposed to.
No, I'm just saying, let's talk about this. If we decide to, I think that Donna's goal was maybe to say I don't know what your goal was, Donna, but like, is the question really, should we eliminate this because it's vague and doesn't have I mean, I'm just going off of how you've approached the rest of this, but that wouldn't necessarily put Karen on the spot to answer specific questions about how the programs are running in schools.
I was a little trying to understand why this is here and what the implications are and whether, so it sounds like there isn't a policy, but there might be a policy?
Yes, it's been requested that policy take it up again this year after having not taken it up last year. Yeah.
But we didn't intentionally not take it up, I'm just saying, like.
Could I ask Karen a smaller question? You'd like to move on?
No, we don't have to, I mean, I guess the question is, like, Donna, were you considering proposing to remove this because there's no year associated and we don't have a policy right now either?
Okay, so now having understood some of the context and framing and background, I'm not proposing anything, I'm not proposing anything yet. I would like to ask Superintendent Wong and Karen, given all the sort of like vagueness around this, how is this helpful sitting in budget guidelines for you?
It says if a policy was to be adopted that requires funding to implement it, identify said funding. So I think this means we would have to cost out what it was to identify how much it would be.
But you don't know if the policy is going to pass, so we're going to set aside money for something that we don't
have
know.
a policy, such a policy.
So would that mean you're setting aside money, you're costing something out, and you're setting aside money for that in the budget, even though we don't know that policy is going to pass?
I believe this is, would be a policy that is beyond what we are required to do. So because you don't have the policy and you would be asking us to cost it out,
We aren't asking you to cost it out. We're asking that it possibly, if it's in a future year, that you would have to, like, we would have to find funding for it.
Yeah, can I just ask a question?
Go ahead.
When Val asked her question about whether we're aligning with state guidelines, are we not providing certain students, like the students that need an aid in an enrichment program today, are we not providing them the opportunity to participate, or are we?
So what I would say is anything that is under the auspices of the PSB, we are providing full access to for all students.
Sure. So if there's a program that's being run in PSB for students, but not funded through PSB, PSB is not really on the hook to provide additional services to specific students in an enrichment program. I'm just trying to understand where this is, because I completely agree with what Ella said. Since it's not a policy yet, it should not be in our guidelines. In a future year, if a policy is done, like let's say policy takes this year to finish this, and the guidelines for FY20 next year, the year after, then let's include it. You know, there's enough institutional memory, we'll remember that we had this in here, but to carry it into a year in which we don't have a policy and then take cycles to cost out something that we don't even know is going to be required, to me seems not as productive as we could be.
And I think also the policy, when it does go through, needs to be clearly articulated, because there are a myriad of organizations and groups that use our schools after school.
Sure.
And that is not, there's no clarity in what it is that you're looking at when you say life of the school. What does that include beyond the school day in terms of what happens in our buildings?
I think, but we do have a policy drafted, and so it does clarify that. But it was, again, before you joined, and we have not had the opportunity to rediscuss it. And I think it's in this gray area of the way that programs are delivered in different schools and the equity around how people can participate based on, for example, it's a really complicated topic, and it lives in what is arguably a quite gray area of the law. And so that's why we had an executive session about it. So I think that if we have
But until we have a policy, I would agree with the sentiment that we shouldn't have it in the guidelines.
well, so I'm asking if we have a motion. Let's get beyond sentiment to motion. You're moving to strike it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we need more discussion, or are we ready for a vote? Okay, we're going to start at that side now. Donna?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Val?
Abstain.
I also abstain.
So I just want to be mindful about time, Mariah, and, but I understand if this needs to be finished tonight, I understand that we just need to take the time. And it's only because the discussion of the memo of understanding or, is still to come. But Val, can I check in with you about that?
Why don't we just wrap it up, and I'll just tell you next steps. So we're going to take what we did tonight, and the finance subcommittee's meeting next week, and this is going to be on the agenda again to take again, we're just taking every opportunity at full committee and finance subcommittee. We're going to look at it again. And hopefully at that point, finance can come up with something that we endorse for the full committee, but we'll see where we get to. So that's the next step for this, and I just want to thank everybody for the sparkling conversation and efficient, effective, the robust discourse of this evening. So, okay, we can keep going. And thank you for pointing out the time.
Sarah, can we just check with Betsy on our executive session? Right, so, but the people who are going to be joining us, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Betsy, for taking care of that. So we are going to move on to the superintendent's report, and I don't think I have to introduce it because you're going to explain in full. So
Okay, great, thank you. I'm sorry it's at this late time, and actually it's time sensitive that I do this presentation tonight because it'll be followed by our town administrator doing the same next week, Thursday at the select board. So this has to happen tonight. At this juncture, you've heard me describe my entry process several times. An important part of that process has been committing to the one-on-one interview process, which allowed me to listen, learn, and ask questions. The process allowed me to determine how best to approach this year to be most helpful to the district and how best to address what the community determined were of highest priority to resolve. One of those priorities has been to address questions about the monitoring of our financial processes. In fairness, there is a legitimate reason why such questions exist, and I believe there are two main reasons. The first reason is that the FY26 budget is premised on funding to be received this fiscal year through our circuit breaker reimbursement, which means it is funding that won't be available for FY27. This deficit is significant enough that the community is actively engaged in a discussion about the need for a possible override. Several different committees have been established to help frame those discussions. One has been the Revenue and Expenditures Study Committee. It is the task of the Revenue and Expenditures Study Committee to reflect on the question of an override and to make a recommendation to that end. In that process, they have a need to ask questions, and to all departments, including the school department, to answer questions about our budget processes, to how we make decisions and what to spend and the implications of the cost of specialized services. So we've received a lot of questions about all of that. The administrative team, led by the senior leadership team, worked collaboratively to respond to those questions. We were able to present those responses to those questions to the school committee subcommittee for budget and finance at the end of September and to the members of Revenue and Expenditure Study Committee early last week. So I just want to take you through, this has been a big priority to answer questions and where we have made progress on the revenue and expenditures. The other thing is we know the school committee agreed to a review of finances and operations through the CLA review. The report was completed last spring. Over the summer and fall, the town's audit committee, so this is another committee, continued discussions about what should be next steps. It was determined that a memorandum of understanding that would clarify established and ongoing cooperative efforts between town and schools would be helpful to assure the community at large of the practices that are in place to ensure spending against funds allocated to the department were being monitored in a timely manner. So I am pleased to share a draft MOU for your consideration. So we've gone through Revenue and Expenditure Study Committee. We will respond to additional questions they might have. The other committee we've been working with is the recommendation by the Audit Committee, and I am glad that they allowed us to work with town administrative leadership directly. This MOU has been a working effort between myself, the town administrator, PSB, Deputy Superintendent of OAF, and the Deputy Town Administrator. It's been reviewed by the chair of the school committee and the chair of the select board with the input of other senior staff. It has also been reviewed by the chair of the budget and finance subcommittee. The draft is being presented to you tonight. The town administrator, Chaz Carey, will present it to the select board next week on the 14th. It is our hope that the respective boards will authorize us to execute the MOU for PSB and the town. This MOU will become our guiding document for next steps. The purpose is to assure that established regular reporting and monitoring of the budget is happening and ongoing. So you have received the hard copy of the memorandum of understanding, and we can go through. So again, this is a memorandum of agreement between the town of Brookline and the public schools of Brookline. In number 1, PSB will continue to provide quarterly budget updates to Brookline School Committee in public session. Once that's done, we will send a copy of the report to the town administrator and to the school subcommittee of the advisory committee after the meeting.
Just to emphasize, the school subcommittee almost always participates in those meetings as well. So,
Yeah.
but yes, it's a continue to.
2, that the town and PSB will review their 5-year revenue and expenditure projections with the town school partnership prior to the superintendent and town administrator releasing their financial plans for the subsequent fiscal year. So we're agreeing to look at our 5-year plans together before presenting more broadly. 3 is an important step in terms of our cooperation, working together with town and schools. We will establish a working group to address business needs of the Munis enterprise-wide system, including chart of accounts and reporting cleanup. The group will also address appropriate delegation of functions in the system. Once alignment on the chart of accounts is attained, the town and PSB will review the viability of using the encumbrance feature in the Munis universally and implement as appropriate. So, but at the core is that there will be a working group together comprised of members of town and schools to look to come to an agreement about our Munis accounts and how best we can utilize them, again, cooperatively. 4, this, we will continue, so this is just assurance, we will continue to make certain that we're following basically public procurement requirements, right? So we will continue to do this. And then 5, we will continue to send at least 1 employee to MCPPO training. We do that as a practice. MCPPO training is just to make sure that everyone is adhering to public procurement rules, and they do get updated from time to time, so that is something that does happen regularly. 6 is that we will continue its review of financial policies in the current fiscal year and publicly document any changes thereto as a result of that review by March 1st, 2026. Thank you to Mariah. She had already said, I had heard her say in a policy subcommittee meeting that was something that she wanted to do. So it's a continue and complete that review. 7, this is something I've been saying that we needed to do, is assess all our central office functions as part of its preparation for the FY27 budget process. This is about evaluating the functions that were eliminated, if we need to reorganize or restore. 8, we will provide a fall report. It's going to be late fall. The Office of Student Services to the school committee, which will include a review of related expenses, as well as an overview of relevant legal requirements and oversight. We've been receiving questions across different committees. We've been answering, but I just feel that a cohesive presentation at school committee is a good thing, because we do have an audience, and we would be recorded, and then people can listen to those recordings. Right now, we're answering those questions in writing, and again, across different venues. And so we are letting everyone know that there will be a presentation it'll be late fall. And then that this agreement will sunset a year from so we have September 30th, because I think we thought we would be at that point, but it's intended to sunset after a year. Do you have questions? Yes. Wait, I don't get it.
Can I just say something at the outset, Bella? I just want to thank you for working on this. It did not start off in this shape, and I really like the way that it now is very clear to the community, the things that we do as a school committee and as an administration on a regular basis. Some of the ways in which we'll tweak that to make sure that other groups see that work in a timely manner. It's very clear, and I think it really is going to be a guiding document for us to restore trust with the community as we move to an override. And again, reiterate that the district is doing good work, has good policies, has good procedures, and under your leadership is really following through on those. So thank you.
Thank you, but I also want to make sure that everyone understands it reflects the agreement and work with the town administrator, deputy town administrator, and of course, our deputy superintendent. So this is, what you see is something that we worked together and we shared and got some input on it. Thank you.
Sarah, you're now back to sharing, right? Oh, I'm raising my hands. Okay. Well, then I guess I'll call on other people other than myself. Bob?
Thank you, Sarah. Bella, the level of trust between the school system and the town governance reflected, that's embedded in this document, is incredibly refreshing and impressive. You know, you've been here for a couple months, a little more than a couple months, and you came into a situation where there was a tremendous lack of trust between the town leadership and the school leadership. And so in a very, very short amount of time, what you've done here with this memorandum going forward is just incredible, and thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse?
Yeah, in number 8, Bill, I was going to suggest, since you, rather than leave it open just with fall, maybe just 4Q25, and that gives you the last 3 months of the year to deliver it. You said it just would be late fall, maybe.
It's because it's already scheduled. It's
Oh, okay.
scheduled, yeah.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
already on your anticipated school committee agenda.
Okay.
So, and so Karen knows and her team knows, so they're preparing to do that presentation. Yeah, that's why we said it, because it's already scheduled.
Okay. And then the other question I had is that, in number 1, is the town agreeable to wait on just quarterly reports and not monthly? Is that something that they've agreed to already?
Right, and so it doesn't mean that we're not monitoring monthly more frequently. It's just when you prepare a public presentation, it takes a certain amount of bandwidth, and also it's more comprehensive. It's looking at all the revolving accounts, different special funds.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to, what do you need the motion to say?
To authorize me to execute this MOU.
Seconded.
I'd like to start the voting with Bob.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes, and I also want to echo the gratitude to Bella, to Susan, to Chaz, to the deputy town administrator, to everybody who worked on this. It's really incredible to see. Thank you.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Great.
Okay.
I do have
Yep, go ahead.
more to the report.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you. So earlier I said, I believe there were 2 main reasons why questions remain. One is the fact of our deficit, but remain about how we manage school finances and budget following last year's budget cycle. The second main reason is that there were public aspersions made in the spring of FY25 about the management of accounts, particularly with respect to student services. And so to that end, I am very pleased to share with you the recent findings of the DESE audit of our IDEA grant. We as a school district, as an institution that utilizes public funds for its operation, are subject to frequent audits. It's just part of what happens. As a matter of course, our financial accounts are audited each year as every other department monitored by the select board and the town administrator. We're always getting audited. As a school district, we are typically undergoing other audits in other parts of our programs or accounts at any time. So tonight, I am providing you an update on the recent results of one of those audits. On February 14th, 2025, PSB was noticed of an audit for the IDEA grant. Am I pronouncing that correctly? IDEA, thank you. IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Act, which represents a federal funding provided to the district's use for the benefit of students with disabilities. It was a targeted fiscal review to determine whether IDEA funds provided to PSB were completely, appropriately, and reasonably expended on students with disabilities pursuant to all related federal and state laws and regulations. Their language, right? So completely, appropriately, and reasonably expended. Participation in this review required staff, especially Karen Schmuckler and Susan Givens, and a lot of other staff that work in their departments, plus financial and accounting staff in the town departments, to search for and pull documents and be interviewed by DESE staff. It was a lot of work, a lot of documents. They reviewed expenditures, documentation to support those expenditures, procurement processes for vendors, vendor contracts, fiscal record keeping, and inventory management. That's a non-exclusive list for the period of FY23 and FY24. And it was especially challenging because not everyone that was committed to provide this information was here in FY23 and FY24. It was an intensive and thorough process. We received notice this week that DESE had completed its review on what had been submitted in their final summation. Within the scope of review, the department noted no areas of non-compliance relative to the use of IDA funds for the respective years in review, and no corrective action required. Where no corrective action is required at this time, the department will continue ongoing monitoring activities as part of its general supervision responsibilities. So no areas of non-compliance, no corrective action. While we always endeavor to do everything we are supposed to be doing, in my experience, it is quite unusual to not have a single corrective action, especially for an audit of the IDEA grant, since it is the most complex and highly regulated grant we receive. To be found fully compliant with not a single corrective action for follow-up is actually super great. It's an excellent result. So I congratulate and offer kudos to Karen, Susan, and all of the staff that worked on this in the school and town department. But so when I started off with what I think were two main reasons for having questions about our financial monitoring or our budgets. One is the fact of the deficit, what happened, and I feel we are working toward that, to resolving that through our responses to R&E, and also hopefully the select board will authorize Chaz to execute the MOU. We will have that. And then I think we move forward and we create a budget. The other were the aspersions on honestly, the use of that grant. And so I am very grateful to the DESE staff. They provided a very thoughtful review, very thorough. And again, congratulations to the staff, because that is just a really excellent result. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, Bella, is it possible for you to share the DESE letter with us by email?
I think so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are we sharing it with town administration or Chaz?
I think the results of it, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That brings us to subcommittee and liaison reports. So for curriculum,
we haven't met yet. We're meeting September 20th? I mean, October 20th, the 23rd. No, I'm all mixed. I'm still, yes, we're meeting about school improvement plans. Those will be double posted, so all school committees can attend? Yes.
Mariah, Finance and Capital Projects?
We're meeting next week. In addition to talking about the guidelines, other presentation of note will be the summer, Charlie Simmons will be joining us to present on the work that happened this summer, budgeting, and a third topic that it's too late tonight for me to remember, but you will hear all about it next week or whenever Betsy posts the agenda. Thanks,
Andy
Betsy.
with
Thanks, everyone.
policy?
Right, we're meeting not next week, but the week after that, and like Mariah, I have no brain left to remember like what exactly we're discussing, but yeah, and
Access
Jesse, I think you were
building usage and
preparing
access.
something. Okay.
And there was one you were looking at, actually.
Oh, was there? Okay, well,
One.
that'll be ready for our meeting.
And that might just be that tonight we might not do liaison reports because it's gotten so late. But let's just go through government relations.
We did meet this week, and we talked about warrant articles coming up for the fall town meeting, and we picked out 3 articles that might be relevant, and we will bring them forward. The 10, 11, and 18 are the ones that we selected, and we are going to bring that forward, which date? October 22nd? October 22nd, school committee meeting.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, good. And I'm going to say that tonight we're not going to do liaison reports and new business, just so that we can.
Can I
go
just
on.
give us like
Oh.
a 10-second update? We had an expenditures and revenues committee meeting this past Monday, I think, and the decision was to divide up the committee into work streams, and Jesse will be on the town work stream, and I will be on the school work stream, and we are waiting to hear scheduling of next steps.
And I think Val and I will be on future.
Oh, you're gonna be on future too? Oh, great. Okay, I knew about Val, and I don't know that I knew about you. Great.
Yep.
Right, is your hand for me?
No.
Okay.
It's for the new business.
Oh, so we are going to do new
No,
business.
well, maybe it's not new, I don't know. What did you just do? Oh, liaisons?
It was just because it was here, expenditures and revenues.
I just wanted to, give a shout out to the senior center. Jesse and Bob and I spent some time at the senior center, just talking to people there, and I wanted to thank Emily Williams for having us. It was a really important opportunity to just connect with the community, and we really appreciated the chance to be there.
Thank you. All right.
Could I do a very brief
Yep,
update
go
on the
ahead.
Pierce Building project? So the steel frame of the building went up in September as scheduled. So, we have all the steel stockpiled, so no tariff issue there. The park across the street is going to start getting dug up in November. So the basketball and baseball fields will be closed from that point for the installation of the geothermal. But the park is supposed to be usable again, like within 1 year. And then the October 30th school building committee meeting should include a walking tour of the site for anyone who wants to join that. So.
And then I think that brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you. Oh,
Right, do
All
I have
right.
to read this again? Do you want to read this? You want me to read it? You can read it.
motion to meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Brookline Educators Union, Union A, grievance, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the committee, and the chair so declares. And purpose 2, to conduct a collective bargaining session with the BEU Unit A hearing on grievance. And so this meeting is adjourned. Oh, sorry,
We have to-
we are
well, I s-
voting.
I second it.
I really want to get going, I guess. All right, so you second it?
Yes, I second it.
All right, so let's go reverse. Val, how do you vote?
On adjournment?
No, to go into executive session.
Yes, yes, yes.
Donna,
Yes,
Jesse,
executive session.
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yeah.
Andy?
Yes.
And Bob?
Okay, yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you and good night. Oh, and we will not be returning.
That one polite good phrase.